Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto gets to know legacy left behind by 4th Hokage part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. On the 18th page of the cute pink notebook her father bought her to celebrate her admission to the Hidden Leafs Ninja Academy, Haruno Sakura kept a short list of the most important rules she learned in her time there. After she passed her first cryptography class, she erased it and rewrote it in a simple cipher she devised herself. She hoped more than enough to keep it safe from the prying eyes of her classmates. By the time she graduated, there were only 5 entries on the list. The first lesson Sakura marked in her notebook was one she started to learn on the first day of classes in her first year: never draw attention to yourself. That lesson was learned in public humiliation, the first and last time she dared to answer a question not specifically asked of her. The weeks before she started attending classes, she pored over the textbooks her father had bought, reading them over and over until she felt she had almost memorized them. When a teacher seeking to impress the new students with how much they had to learn asked a question about the basic principles behind explosive seals, Sakura raised her hand and answered without being called on. That led to a stern warning not to speak without permission, followed by an intense interrogation on sealing techniques that quickly left the contents of the first-year textbooks behind and left Sakura in tears. It took only a few similar incidents over the next weeks to secure that lesson as one she would never forget. That was why, on the day of the final graduation exam, Sakura slipped into her classroom a few minutes before class was to start, and took the empty seat in the back near the door, next to Naruto Shikamaru. Before the first class of the year, he'd moved away once she was seated, but the next day he had apparently decided sitting next to her was less of a pain than sitting closer to the teachers. So long as she didn't bother him, he didn't bother her. And he'd even shared his rather thin notes without being asked when she'd missed class on the 10th of October. That made him the closest thing she had to a friend in her class. Sakura gave a longing glance several rows toward the front of the classroom, where the 2 rivals for the title of top Kunoichi Ino and Ami were feuding over who would take the prize seat next to Uchiha Sasuke. The object of their attentions kept up his facade of stoic indifference, but Sakura imagined that underneath that was a boiling cauldron of passion, just waiting for the right woman to unlock it. A slight smile worked its way onto her face as she studied him from afar. Another page in her notebook had once been dedicated to him, but after a close call the horror of Ami or Ino discovering that had forced her to destroy that page. Those fantasies were best kept inside her head. And maybe once they graduated, if they were placed on the same team, if she could just talk to him without braving the gauntlet of the other girls, maybe then they could exist in reality. Her face hardened as the classroom door opened and a very different boy raced through the door and down to his customary seat on the first row. He was the subject of the second rule on her list, one that had been a direct order from her father. She was an obedient child by nature, and her father rarely raised his voice to her. When he had told her to never have anything to do with Uzumaki, Naruto was one of those few times. The incident occurred the second week of classes in her first year. Naruto, at that point she had only known him as the loud blonde kid who always sat in the front, came up to her when she'd been eating her lunch alone, dragging behind him a silver-eyed girl that Sakura hadn't even noticed was in their class. They talked for a little bit, although the other girl, Hinata, stayed mostly silent. Now, almost 4 years later, Sakura didn't remember what the conversation had involved. She remembered being excited about making her first friends, thrilled that maybe the outcast status she'd gained after her humiliating experience on the first day was lifting. Naruto had been even more excited the next day, when he rushed over to her before classes began, words tripping over themselves as he said that his mother wanted him to invite her over after classes. Why this so enthused him, Sakura still didn't know. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she'd just gone with him, but she was better trained than that. She promised to ask her father for permission to go the next afternoon. His reaction had been unexpected, and she could remember his words as clearly as if he was saying them today. Absolutely not, her father had told her. That boy and his mother are the reason your mother is dead. What the Uzumaki have done to us, done to you, can never be forgiven. Why? Sakura asked, tears in her eyes. What did they do? I can't tell you, her father said, his voice turning gentle. You don't need that burden yet or ever. Then he gave her the order that became Sakura's second rule. She obeyed, of course, doing her best to ignore the boy's questions over the next few days. When Hinata asked Sakura why she was ignoring Naruto the first time and the last time the other girl started a conversation with Sakura on her own, she explained her father's command. The next week, Sakura was moved to another class section. She wouldn't have classes with Naruto again until her final year in the academy, when only one section was left. She was in the same class as Hinata again the next year, but her one effort to talk with the other girl was coldly and firmly rebuffed. So long as Sakura wouldn't speak with Naruto, Hinata had explained, she wouldn't have anything to do with Sakura. The next two rules on Sakura's short list came from October 10th of that year. The year before, she had been sick with the flu on that date. During her second year, her father was away on a mission, one of the first times in her young memory that he was gone for multiple days. He had been supposed to return the day before, but was delayed. While her father was gone, a teacher for one of the older classes who lived nearby walked her to school instead. Sakura realized this was unusual. On that day, while they were heading to attend the half-day of classes prior to festival celebrating the fourth Hokage's final victory, she asked the silver-haired man why he was doing that for her. He actually smiled at her, and explained that he had been her father's teammate as a genin. That was enough to put an unfamiliar bounce in Sakura's step. That vanished when they reached the academy and found a large group of adults arguing with another teacher. "What's the issue, Irika-sensei?" Sakura's escort asked as they drew near. The scarred teacher gave Sakura a look she still couldn't interpret, even though it remained clear in her memories. "These men and women have a complaint for the teaching staff, Mizuki-sensei. Send her inside and we'll discuss it." Before he could answer, though, one of the women spoke. "Even if our request is rejected, today of all days our children shouldn't have to be with her. It's abhorrent for her to be part of this day." "Sakura-chan is a student of the Leaf's Ninja Academy," Mizuki said firmly. "You have no right to deny her that." "Look," one of the men said. "There's an easy way to solve this." Sakura hadn't yet known to call what she felt killing intent. She fell to her knees, paralyzed in terror. If the girl's in the hospital, she can't attend classes. There was a blur of motion, and then Mizuki was in front of her, catching a kunai strike in his bare hand. She remembered the blood dripping from his palm, fascinating her so much that she barely recalled the other adults wrestling the attacker to the ground, or the scarred teacher angrily ordering someone to fetch Anbu. Later, in the academy infirmary, as she'd watched Mizuki bandage his hand, she tearfully asked, why? Why had those parents hated her so? Why had this teacher who she didn't know let himself be hurt to save her? He smiled again, and answered her second unspoken question. She remembered the words perfectly. "Takaru is my precious comrade, and you are his precious daughter. That makes you precious to me, also. This," he said, gesturing at his injured palm, "is nothing, if it means protecting my precious people. For my precious people, I would do anything." His smile faded slightly. "Anything at all. That's my way of the ninja." Then he reached out and ruffled her hair fondly. "I hear you aren't doing very well in your classes this year, Sakura-chan. I want you to study hard and do better, so in a couple years you can be my most wonderful student. All right?" An hour later, her father returned and pulled her from class. That evening, Sakura added 2 more rules to her list. The third rule came from her father again, that she was never to leave home on October 10th. The fourth was her own rule, that she would always protect her precious people as best she could, even if there were only 2 people she could call precious in the world. The fifth rule on her list, she would not add until this evening, after she discovered the truth about herself. Sakura quietly got up and went into the next classroom when Mizuki called her name. There was none of the warmth he showed in private in his voice, but there never was. Sakura was used to that, and had actually been a little grateful once she'd gotten over her initial disappointment in the first classes of the year. A teacher being overly familiar with her would only draw attention. She glanced once at the rows of forehead protectors on the desk before turning her attention to the 2 teachers sitting behind it. She knew what the test was, of course, but she still waited to be told what to do. "The replication technique," Irika said. "Please perform it." Sakura nodded, her hands precisely forming the correct seal, drawing deeply on her chakra. "Replication technique," she breathed, the words helping to focus her power. An instant later, a copy of herself appeared standing next to her, hands forming the same seal. Mizuki smiled gently at her. "Well done, Sakura-chan." Sakura's heart leapt at the praise. Irika grunted. "All the other students have been able to make at least 3, he said sourly. "And she's forgetting to make the replication look like it is breathing." Sakura could feel herself wilt as she stared at her feet. Had she come this far only to fail now? "Those aren't the conditions for a passing grade, and you know that, Irika-sensei," Mizuki returned. "Sakura-chan has already passed the tests for the transformation technique and the replacement technique, and her academic scores have always been excellent. Even with a minimum passing grade for this test, she shouldn't be failed. Her chakra control is mediocre at best," Irika returned, "and she has only average stamina to make up for it. Her scores in taijutsu are only barely passing." Sakura wanted to sink into the floor and vanish. "We aren't here to build self-esteem or churn out mediocre kunai fodder, Mizuki-sensei. We need to make sure our students are ready to be genin of the Leaf. Our job is to ensure they meet the standards set by Hokage-sama, Irika-sensei," Mizuki said. Beyond that, it is the responsibility of their Jounin squad leaders. Irika shook his head. We shouldn't be arguing like this in front of a student. Mizuki smiled at Sakura, reaching for one of the forehead protectors. But she isn't our student anymore, is she? Irika sighed. I suppose you are right, he said, and then he nodded at Sakura. Congratulations, Hareno's Sakura-kun. You have successfully completed the graduation requirements of the Hidden Village of the Leafs Ninja Academy. In the name of the third Hokage, I bestow upon you the rank of Genin, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that entails. Mizuki held out a forehead protector. Come here, Sakura-chan, he told her, and she nervously stepped forward and accepted the item from his hands. She glanced between the two teachers. Go ahead, Irika said. For once a slight smile graced the scarred teacher's face. Sakura lifted the forehead protector to her face, then in one smooth motion tied it around her head. Had she really done it? She couldn't quite believe it, after 4 years of always being on the brink of failure. Congratulations, Irika said again. Mizuki stood and led her back out to the main classroom, calling for Hinata to come and take her test. Sakura's eyes instantly sought out Sasuke, seated perfectly still at his desk with his hands folded over his face. She imagined that maybe his head moved slightly in acknowledgement. Seated beside him, leaning back in her seat with her arms crossed in front of her chest, Ino snorted. What are you looking at, loser? On her other side, her rival Ami laughed nastily. I'd bet they had to get a special, extra-large forehead protector for you. Sakura looked away. She hadn't really expected that graduating would change anything, but it might have been nice to be able to dream for a little while. Naruto offered her a smile as she passed him on her long trek up to the back of the classroom, but with an ease born of practice she ignored him. When she reached her seat next to the apparently sleeping Shikamaru, the boy raised his head from his desk, momentarily opening one eye. I guess this test really isn't anything to worry about. There wasn't any malice in the statement, so Sakura just nodded. He was right down with her at the bottom of the class rankings, after all. She did her best to ignore the cheers and congratulations each other student got from their friends as they passed the final test. She offered her own when Shikamaru returned wearing his forehead protector on his sleeve. He only shrugged and went back to sleep. A short while later, at the graduation celebration, Sakura immediately sought out her father, leaning on a tree out in the playground. Sakura raced toward him, and when his face broke into the wide smile she so rarely saw, her heart pounded like it was going to burst. Come here, you, he mock-snarled, kneeling down and gathering her into a great big hug. Sakura gave a squeal as he stood, lifting her up with him. He raised her up until she was looking him directly in the green eyes that matched her own, and then he thrust his head forward, knocking his own, battered forehead protector against hers. If your mother could see you now, he whispered, and in that moment Sakura didn't care about the other girls, didn't care about Naruto, and didn't even care about Sasuke. Her father gently set her down. Mizuki, he said in greeting, and Sakura half turned to see her now former teacher standing behind her. Thank you for taking care of her, he said. Mizuki smiled. It was nothing, he said. But if you want to repay me, take the Chunin exams again. You're good enough now, and it's embarrassing for my old teammate to be the same rank as his daughter. Sakura's father looked down at her. You know why I haven't, he said. I know, was all Mizuki said. After a moment, her father shrugged. Maybe next time, if I can find a team, since they'll be at home. There was a cough, and all three of them turned to the source. Sakura clenched her small fists. What did he, of all people, want now? Why did he want to ruin this day? Do you need something, Naruto-kun? Mizuki asked easily. Harino-san, the blonde boy said seriously. Sakura wondered why he was being so formal, until she realized he was talking to her father. My mother asked me to ask you to come speak with her. Her father's face was hard and expressionless. All that needs to be said was said years ago, he said. What was this about? Sakura had given up on trying to get him to explain why the Uzumaki family was so awful, or how they'd killed her mother. Naruto swallowed loudly, unusually nervous. She said to tell you that there were things she needed to tell you, now that Sakura-chan was going to be a genin. He glanced at Sakura curiously. What's all this about? He demanded loudly, suddenly much more like himself. Her father's face didn't soften, but he nodded once. Go, he said harshly. I'll be there in a moment. Naruto looked like he wanted to press for an answer to his question. Naruto-kun, Mizuki warned, and after a moment the boy raced off. I hate to impose, Mizuki, Sakura's father began. It's no problem, Takaru, the teacher replied. I was actually going to ask you if I could borrow Sakura-chan for the afternoon. Sakura's father blinked once. Why? I'd like to take her down to the administrative offices, introduce her to some of my friends in Hokage-sama's staff, Mizuki said. Show her some things she'll need to know. Maybe find out which jounin are applying for teams this year. All right, her father agreed. Thank you. Mizuki smiled down at Sakura. Come on, Sakura-chan, he said. I'll take you to go get some dango, and then we'll head to the Hokage Tower, okay? Mizuki had more than kept his word, seemingly trying to pack all the favoritism he hadn't shown Sakura over the last year into one afternoon. The lunch and trip to the administrative offices had turned into a wide-ranging excursion through the village while her former teacher filled her head with enough advice she wished she'd taken notes. He'd shown her everything from the restaurants near the genin training grounds that gave the best discounts to a building hidden in one of the pockets of woods inside the village walls that he claimed was perfect for secret training sessions. They hadn't made it to the Hokage Tower until the sun started setting. Now Sakura was on her own, nervously standing in front of the closed door of the Hokage's office. The two chunin standing guards stared back at her. What do you want? The one wearing a bandage across his nose asked, sounding like he wanted her to just disappear. Sakura wanted to disappear too, but this was for Mizuki. She could do this. I want to see Hokage-sama, she said, trying to keep her voice from breaking. Any leaf ninja has the right to present a petition to him. She gestured at her head, feeling the unfamiliar weight of her forehead protector. Hokage-sama is in a very important meeting and can't be disturbed, the other guard said. As if on cue, a very familiar voice came from inside the room. Come on, old man. You promised you'd take Mom and me and Konohamaru out for ramen to celebrate my graduation. Can't that paperwork wait? The guards exchanged looks. You can go right in, Haruno-san, the first said, opening the door. Sakura scurried inside, the door loudly shutting behind her. The Hokage was seated behind his desk, puffing on a pipe while writing on some papers. Standing on the other side, leaning over the desk, was none other than Uzumaki Naruto. He turned around. Sakura-chan? He asked. The Hokage said, putting his pen down. And what can I do for you, young lady? Sakura took a deep breath. I have a question for you, Hokage-sama. The old man smiled gently at her, the same way he did when he took her out for ramen on her birthday. It had been a little surprising to her when she learned in her first year at the academy that he didn't do that for everyone. What do you want to know, Sakura-chan? She tried not to let her nervousness show. Now that I'm a genin, she said, just as Mizuki had instructed her, I want to know the truth about the fourth Hokage's legacy. The third Hokage's smile faded instantly. Beside him Naruto blinked several times. Huh? The boy asked. What's the fourth's legacy, old man? The Hokage extinguished his pipe and set it down on his desk. Naruto-kun, he said seriously. Go find Konohamaru-kun and play with him, please. I believe I hear him trying to sneak into the kitchen and steal some cookies. Naruto glanced between the old man and Sakura, face twisting in confusion. What the hell is going on? Naruto, the Hokage snapped. The boy swallowed loudly. Yes, sir, he said. Sakura shrank away as he passed her, giving her a look she couldn't interpret. The door sounded even louder when it shut this time. The Hokage gestured, and Sakura heard the door locking. His eyes bored into her, and she stumbled backward. He kept staring, and she almost just fell down and curled into a ball. She wasn't sure why he was mad, but she knew the old man was furious. There was nothing apparent of the kind grandfather, and everything of one of the 5 most powerful people in the world. Sakura-chan, he said softly. I'm not angry with you. He didn't sound like he was lying, but then he wouldn't. He was a ninja. I'm angry with whoever told you to ask me that. She couldn't get Mizuki in trouble. No one told me, she whispered weakly. Sakura-chan, the Hokage said, his voice not losing 1 ounce of gentleness, if you ever lie to me again, I will become angry with you. One of his hands tapped on his desk. The mere fact that you used those words tells me someone told you to ask me that question. If you knew enough to think of the fourth Hokage's legacy as something you should know about, you would already know the answer to your question. Who was it? Sakura stared at her feet, her forehead protector seeming to gain weight with every instant. She couldn't lie to the Hokage, but she had to protect Mizuki. Had her teacher not known that this would make the Hokage mad? That must be it. Your father wouldn't, not in 10,000 years, the Hokage said. Iruka? No, he's not so foolish. His hand tapped some more. I saw Mizuki lead you away from the graduation ceremony. Was it him? Sakura winced involuntarily. Mizuki, I'm very disappointed in him. Please don't, Sakura began, but then she stopped. She wasn't even sure why what he had done was wrong. How could she plead for mercy? The Hokage gestured, and the door unlocked loudly. Kotetsu! He shouted. One of the Chunin guards opened the door and stuck his bandaged head inside the room. Hokage-sama? He asked. Fetch me Yumino Irika and a tracking squad. Get one of the birds ready to send a signal to the patrols. Izumo. Sakura winced. How could this be so bad? How could a hero like the fourth Hokage have left a legacy so horrible that mentioning it was this serious? And what did it have to do with her? The door opened all the way and the other guard replaced Kotetsu. Sir. Take Sakura-chan here to meeting room 3 and stand guard. Meeting room 3? Hokage-sama, that room is in use. You let. Were my instructions somehow unclear, Chunin? The Hokage asked. No, sir. Izumo stepped inside and grabbed Sakura's hand. She knew better than to protest the mild pain of his too strong grip. This way, Harino-san. A few minutes later, she was roughly shoved into a windowless room, the door slamming shut behind her. The lights were turned down, and it took her a few moments to adjust to the relative dimness. The room was almost entirely filled by a large, wooden table, surrounded by chairs. At the far end of the table from the entrance, a beautiful woman with long red hair was seated, seemingly asleep. Pretty, Sakura wasn't able to stop herself from saying softly. She looked like a manga heroine. The woman's eyes opened, and Sakura flushed, mortified. The redhead touched a button on the table, and the lights returned to full strength, momentarily blinding Sakura. The woman studied the girl for a moment. You're Harino Sakura. Her voice didn't match her face. It was an ugly, croaking thing. Why yes, ma'am, Sakura said, staring at her feet. Being recognized by a stranger was never good. Was this woman going to punish her for the Hokage? All she'd wanted to do was help Mizuki. Was that really wrong? The woman pushed her chair away from the table, and Sakura realized that it was a wheelchair, rather than one of the large wooden chairs surrounding the table. The woman started moving down the side of the table toward Sakura, and the girl shrank back. The woman stopped. I'm not going to hurt you, she said hoarsely, her voice breaking. Come, she cut off in a sudden fit of coughing before continuing. Come closer. Please. Sakura hesitated, but took a few halting steps forward. Then she stopped. You're crying, she said aloud as she noticed the tears on the woman's face. Did I do something? Child, the woman said, sounding angry. Sakura winced, and the woman grimaced. Child, it's not your fault, she said more gently. With surprising speed, she wheeled herself across the last few feet, and before Sakura could retreat, she leaned forward in her chair, gathering Sakura into an awkward embrace. Nothing is your fault, do you understand? She whispered into Sakura's ear. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She paused for a moment. Oh, child, I'm sorry, she said softly, stifling a sob. For everything. Sakura had absolutely no idea what to do. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. The other students at the academy cried, but they were children like her. Her father cried sometimes, around October 10th, but not when he knew she watching. No one ever apologized to her for anything. Only her father hugged her. She didn't even know this woman. What was she supposed to do? She just stood there, frozen, strange feelings burning in her chest. After a while, the woman released Sakura from her embrace and sat back in her seat again. You look so much like Amaya did, she said, her eyes shining with tears, but you have your father's eyes. Sakura swallowed nervously. You knew my mother? She asked weakly. The woman's eyes closed briefly. Yes, she said when they opened again. We were very close friends, your mother and I. She didn't say anything more, and Sakura shifted uncomfortably under the woman's unwavering gaze. What was she supposed to do? The strange feelings inside her didn't fade, but she slowly calmed enough to think. The Hokage had he'd clearly wanted her to meet this woman. Why? To answer her question? Ma'am, Sakura said nervously, do you know what the fourth Hokage's legacy is? The woman recoiled like she'd been slapped. Child, she croaked. I can't tell you if you don't already know. Please don't make me be the one. I want to know, Sakura almost shouted. What is it? It has something to do with me and everyone gets mad when I mention it. The woman suddenly bent over, one hand pressing over her stomach. She looked up at Sakura, then grabbed her. Child, she said harshly. Calm down. Sakura tried, almost instinctively obeying the order, but she couldn't. She looked at the woman's face, and her eyes widened as she watched markings appearing on her cheeks. 3 dark lines, almost like whiskers, on each one. Just like You're Naruto's mother, Sakura breathed, and the woman nodded. This was the woman who was responsible for her mother's death. Sakura felt a fury rising inside of her, like nothing she'd felt before. She was mad and she was burning inside and… The woman roughly lifted up Sakura's red dress, provoking a squeal of rage and embarrassment. I'm sorry, she said, but I don't have the strength to do this through clothing. Sakura gasped as she looked down at her bare stomach, seeing an intricate, spiral pattern on her skin that she'd never seen before. A seal? What the hell was going on? The woman's free hand pressed against Sakura's skin, the cold tips of her fingers tracing the spiral. There was a flash of green light, cool and soothing. You remember the taste of that chakra, don't you? The woman gasped out. Don't you? What? Sakura asked confusedly, but then the burning was gone, the spiral over her stomach fading rapidly. Her fury suddenly left her, leaving her gasping for breath. Naruto's mother let Sakura's dress drop back down and took a deep breath herself. Her eyes were drier now, and there was something new in them as they observed Sakura. The whisker-like lines on the woman's face faded away as Sakura watched. Sakura stepped backward, feeling her own eyes water. Her anger started to build again, but it felt normal. Not like what she had felt before. That was when the door opened, and Naruto stepped inside. Mom? Are you okay? We heard shouting Sakura-chan? What is she doing in here? The Chunin guard poked his head inside the room, but Sakura had no eyes for him. You, she said to Naruto's mother. You killed my mom. Naruto growled suddenly. What? You take that back. My mom wouldn't. Naruto, the woman said, cutting her son off. She slumped in her wheelchair, seeming much older. She's right. I did. Naruto stood frozen. Mom? He asked, his voice horrified. That's why. Kushina-san? The Chunin interrupted. The woman bent over, coughing and covering her mouth with her fist. Sakura took another step away. When Kushina took her hand away, there was blood on it. She stared at it a moment, then started coughing again, loudly and wetly. Naruto's eyes widened. Mom! He shouted, racing over to her side. Izumo-san! Get the medics! The Chunin raced off without a word. Sakura realized she was crying, and she didn't know whether from rage or guilt. She couldn't take this anymore. She ran out of the room, and no one stopped her as she fled the Hokage tower. The ANBU at the Hokage's side tensed in preparation to leap down from the window of his office and intercept the running girl, but Sarutobi stopped her with a gesture. Hokage-sama? The cat-masked woman asked, confusion clear in her voice. Let her run. I'll keep an eye on her myself, Sarutobi confirmed. Her chakra was unique enough that it wouldn't be too hard to track with his seeing glass, knowing her starting point. She might just lead us straight to Mizuki faster than we can find him ourselves. Call Iruka back. I might need to send someone to her in a hurry, and she'll trust him more than an ANBU. Sir, the Kunoichi said, I don't understand. Why would this Mizuki tell the girl where he was going if he sent her straight to you? The Hokage grunted. Mizuki picked a distraction that trivially pointed back to him, and guaranteed he'd only have a few hours head start at most. No one I picked as an academy teacher is so foolish as to do that on accident. There's something more going on here, and I intend to find out. Yes, sir, the ANBU replied, and she spoke into her radio for a moment, passing on the orders. Then she hesitated. If this Mizuki did steal the fourth scroll of seals, and he wanted Haruno to meet with him afterwards, sir, if they're planning to break the seal. It would be a ritual that would take days or weeks, the Hokage finished firmly. It isn't an immediate concern. Yes, sir. Sakura wanted to go home, but she couldn't. She couldn't tell her father that she'd been tricked into breaking his rule against talking to the Uzumaki. She couldn't tell him that she'd let the woman who had killed her mother hug her. She didn't want to tell him that Mizuki had asked her to do something that had gotten him in trouble. She didn't want to ask him the questions that boiled inside of her. Nothing made any sense. She needed time to think. She didn't know where else to go. She had no friends whose house she could visit. A restaurant or cafe was too public. She couldn't figure this out there, even if she had known one that would tolerate her loitering there. For lack of a better option, she continued down the familiar streets to her home. She slowed as she got closer, dread growing in her with each step. That was when she passed alongside the woods where Mizuki had shown her the hidden, abandoned building. With the sun now set, the dark forest looked less inviting than it had in the early afternoon, but she thought she knew the way. If she could just sit down there for a little while and think, maybe things would start making sense again. Maybe Mizuki was hiding there too, and she could just ask him what he was trying to do. She had to have done something wrong. There was no reason for Mizuki to want the Hokage to be mad at the two of them. She still wanted to help him, if she could. Even in the darkness, she easily found the correct path through the woods. She was good at following instructions, even those she had only heard once. When she reached the small clearing containing the wooden building, she was disappointed to find it empty. She had almost convinced herself that she would find Mizuki here. Maybe he was inside. She hesitatingly tested the door to the wooden building and found it locked, just as they'd left it this afternoon. Sakura pulled the key Mizuki had given her out of the pocket of the shorts she wore under her dress and unlocked the door. The inside was just as she'd remembered it, dusty and empty except for a writing desk in one corner under the dirty window and a broken bed frame in the other. A ladder Sakura didn't trust lead up to the small attic. Sakura wondered idly what purpose this building had served before turning her mind to more pressing matters. Maybe Mizuki's purpose would become clear if she could figure out what fourth Hokage's legacy was. That was a good question, safely distant from the emotional turmoil her encounter with Uzumaki Kushina had provoked. What did she know? The fourth Hokage's legacy was something bad, something that the Hokage did not want anyone asking about. The fourth Hokage's legacy had something to do with her. The reactions of both the Hokage and Naruto's mother proved that. Sakura wandered over to the desk and traced a spiral in the thick dust with her finger. Was the seal that had appeared on her stomach related? Was it itself perhaps the fourth's legacy? Why had she never seen it until today? Why would the fourth Hokage have placed such a complex seal on some random girl? There was nothing special about her or her parents that she knew of who was less than a year old when he sacrificed himself to kill the Ninetales. It didn't make any sense. The young girl dithered a moment over taking the next step, but ultimately lifted her dress over her head with a flush of embarrassment. She neatly folded the red fabric and, after wiping off more dust with her hand, placed it on the desk. Only then did she turn her attention to her stomach. What she saw was the same as what she saw every morning as she dressed, her own slightly pale, unmarked skin. She poked and prodded it for a minute, as though she could coax the spiral pattern out of hiding. Stubbornly, it remained hidden. What had caused it to emerge? Her anger at Naruto's mother? No, it had started when she'd gotten angry about no one telling her what the fourth Hokage's legacy was. But she'd been angry before, angrier than she'd been at the time, at least until she had learned the woman's identity, and that unnatural rage had started rising inside of her. She tried to recapture how she'd felt in those moments, but failed. Even thinking of Kushina and how she had killed her mother couldn't summon that wrath. Her thoughts shied away from that. She didn't want to think about that. She wanted to figure out this stupid seal. Could a genjutsu be hiding it? It didn't make much sense, but it wasn't hard to test, at least to the limit of her abilities. If she tried to escape the illusion and failed well, it wouldn't rule anything out, given that she was only a newly graduated genin and that any such genjutsu must be complex beyond her imagining. It wouldn't hurt to try, though. She locked her hands into a seal and started to draw upon her chakra. Obligingly, the spiral pattern appeared almost instantly, long before she could attempt to dispel the theoretical genjutsu. It was pale at first, but rapidly darkened. Shocked, Sakura separated her hands and released her hold on her chakra, and the seal started to fade away. She quickly reformed the hand seal and called up her chakra again, and the fading halted and reversed. Soon, the full pattern she recalled was visible, the spiral surrounded by two semicircles, both with 4 prongs jutting outward, away from the spiral. Could it really be this simple? After a moment's thought, she was forced to conclude that it could be. She didn't practice ninjutsu in her underwear, after all. The seal could have been visible all through her academy classes, and no one would have ever known. But what was its purpose? What was it doing to her? She studied the pattern, but it might as well have been gibberish to her. The incident on her first day of classes had left her with a distaste for the art, and sealing was one area of study where she hadn't indulged in any recreational reading. That was clearly something she would need to rectify. She stared at the mysterious pattern a moment longer before letting it fade away again. Despite her discovery, she was as deep in the dark as before. She felt certain that this seal was, or was somehow related to, the fourth Hokage's legacy, but that put her almost no closer to finding out what that terrible legacy was. Shivering from a suddenly noticed chill, she quickly redressed herself. That was when she heard the voices outside and froze. The scroll isn't here? Why didn't you just bring it to our meeting point? Do you have to ask that question, Tsurugi? Mizuki. I suppose trust is a little much to ask for at this point, the other man answered. But isn't this a little close to the tower? They don't know that I can use shadow replications, Mizuki said. Shadow replications? Sakura had never heard of those. They'd been chasing red herrings all over the village for hours now. What was going on? This didn't make any sense at all. The handle of the door moved. Unlocked? Mizuki asked, and suddenly the door was flung open. Sakura-chan? Her former teacher asked in shock. He was dressed for battle, she realized, oversized shuriken strapped to his back. Beside him stood a man Sakura didn't recognize, not that she could really tell behind the dark cloth mask that hung over his face or the bandana that covered his head. He was tall, and his thin-rimmed glasses did nothing to hide the cold look in his eyes as he studied Sakura. She swallowed, not in the least bit comforted by the leaf forehead protector the strange man wore. Mizuki-sensei, she said reflexively. What are you doing here? Hokage-sama should have. Mizuki was interrupted as the man beside him suddenly moved past him. One of his arms twisted and lengthened, and before Sakura could react it had grabbed her by the neck and pinned her against the filthy window. What have we here? The man asked. Tsurugi, Mizuki said warningly. The man's free hand reached up to adjust his thin glasses. It seems we'll be collecting 2 treasures from the Hokage today, he said. Our master will be pleased. This wasn't part of the agreement, Mizuki snapped. Target of opportunity, Tsurugi said. Now, unless you want to try renegotiating, fetch the scroll. Mizuki's posture fell, and he slowly walked over to an empty corner and knelt. Suddenly there was a large scroll lying on the floor beside him. Genjutsu. Sakura's mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts, but one forced itself past her panic. This man knew what made her special. Why? She gasped out. For an instant, the man's grip around her neck tightened. Why do you want me? Tsurugi relaxed his grip and laughed. You don't know? I'll tell you. Mizuki froze. Tsurugi. All right, the man said with another laugh. She can live in ignorance a while longer. He paused, and then his other arm lengthened, grabbing the scroll before retracting to his side. After you, he said, gesturing with the scroll at the door. Mizuki nodded and turned to the exit. Mizuki-sensei, Sakura whispered, and he stopped as he reached the door. Why are you doing this? He opened the door. I've told you before, he said. I'd do anything to protect my precious people. And best you remember that, Tsurugi said. The arm holding Sakura short and carrying her with it. She struggled briefly, but in a matter of moments she was securely held against the man's chest. Mizuki and him headed outside, and Tsurugi shut the door behind him. He set the scroll and Sakura down, but her kept one of her arms twisted behind her back in secure grip. What are you waiting for? Mizuki asked. We need to get moving. We do, Tsurugi said. Once you discard your weapons. He chuckled. I don't trust you either. Mizuki nodded. Wise, he said, and then the scroll next to the other man detonated. Tsurugi was between Sakura and the blast, but it still knocked her against the wall of the building. The log her captor used for the replacement technique fell on top of Sakura, knocking the wind out of her. A half-dozen kunai flew from the cover of the trees, but only one struck Mizuki, scoring a thin slice across his upper arm. He smiled grimly, lifting one massive shuriken off of his back with his other hand. It began to spin rapidly. You would risk your precious Tsubaki for that thing? Tsurugi's voice came from out of the darkness. I'm surprised. I would, Mizuki replied, to avoid the certainty of your master hurting my student. He paused. Sakura, run, he commanded, and then he leapt into the trees. As soon as she got the log off of her, Sakura obeyed, running in the opposite direction. Less than a minute later, her other teacher Irika appeared out of the gloom in front of her. Sakura-chan, stop, he ordered. Sakura paused for just a moment, then hurled the rock she'd picked up off the ground during her flight at the man as she broke off in another direction. She didn't see if her attack hit, but it didn't do any good. Moments later, Tsurugi, his whole body stretched out like a snake, wrapped around her, pinning her to the ground and twisting her neck painfully. How did you know? He asked. Irika-sensei never calls me Sakura-chan, she managed to gasp out. Of course not, the man said. What an amateur mistake I made. There's no way Irika would call you that. Why? Sakura asked again. She didn't need to say anything more. This time Tsurugi answered her. You know the story of the 4th Hokage's final battle, don't you? He asked, his breath warm on Sakura's neck. What they don't tell you in the academy is that the 4th couldn't kill the demon. Perhaps no man could. They also don't tell you about a special law, he continued, a law that concerns only you. A law that hides a secret about you. Sakura was not a slow thinker, and her mind made the connection it hadn't been able to make before. I'm the nine-tailed demon fox, she said tonelessly, as her world crashed to pieces around her. It made a terrible sense. A demon that could not be killed was sealed into human form instead, raised as one of the very ninja it had tried to destroy. Her mind raced through implications despite her desire to stop it. Did her father know? Was he her father at all? What did that even mean, if she was the demon fox? Was everything she thought she was nothing but a lie? Tsurugi just laughed. Then he coughed, and Sakura felt something warm and wet hit her. His grip went slack, and Sakura instinctively freed herself in an instant. She turned around to see one of Mizuki's massive shurikens sticking out of her captor's back. How? Tsurugi asked. Mizuki, standing behind him and holding another shuriken, snorted. Remedial ninjutsu lesson, he said quietly, fury in his voice. Shadow replications keep going when the original is unconscious. Idiot. The second shuriken came down and took Tsurugi in the neck. Sakura stumbled backward, falling to the ground. Mizuki-sensei, she said, her voice quavering. Did he know the truth about her? Would he hate her now, like everyone else? Mizuki walked past the still corpse of his opponent and knelt down beside Sakura. She looked away in shame, and he reached out, gently turning her face back to him. You're not the demon fox, he said softly. But it makes sense, Sakura answered. That's why everyone hates me. Listen to me, Mizuki pleaded. You are Haruno Sakura. You were born on the 28th of March, and I held you in my arms on that day. You are the daughter of Haruno Takaru and Amaya. You are my most wonderful student. You are not the demon, and never will be. Then what am I? I've seen the seal. You are the demon's container, Mizuki explained. It's prison. It was sealed inside of you, but it is not you. Sakura wondered if that even made a difference. Surely a being so terrible as the nine-tailed demon fox could not be housed by a baby girl without consequence on her development. Whatever girl Haruno Sakura might have grown into had as good as died on the day the demon was placed inside of her. There was a soft thud, and Irika landed on the ground beside Mizuki. Mizuki, he said, his voice hard. The silver-haired teacher stood. I won't ask for mercy, he said. If he hadn't tried to kidnap Sakura-chan, I would have gone along with him. He sighed. The scroll is in the hut, under a genjutsu. The real me is about 100 meters back that way, knocked out. He pointed. Irika nodded. He threatened Tsubaki-chan? Mizuki nodded. When I had second thoughts. He looked down at Sakura. Sakura-chan, I don't know when or if they'll let the real me speak to you again. He smiled weakly. But remember what I told you. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. Sakura nodded stiffly, still trying to absorb everything she had learned. Mizuki's one smile faded, and then he vanished in a puff of smoke. Much later that evening, after a stressful, too long interrogation from the Hokage, and an even worse, too short talk with her father, Sakura was sent to her room to sleep. As she undressed for bed, before putting her nightgown on, she stood in front of her mirror and channeled chakra. She stared at the seal that appeared for a long moment, then released her chakra, hiding the marks with her hands until they faded. Then she walked over to her desk, turned to the 18th page in the cute pink notebook her father bought her to celebrate her admission to the Hidden Leafs Ninja Academy, and added a fifth rule to her list in her custom cipher. No one must learn what you are. Hatake Kakashi was late for the team assignment meeting. This shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone, as he'd been late to the meeting each and every time he'd been told by the Hokage to request a team. He was well aware that this usually resulted in him getting a team no one else wanted, but that was fine. Usually, he wasn't particularly interested in teaching anyway, and no one got upset when that kind of team failed. Everyone won except for the old man. This year, though, he was only an hour and a half late. That was long enough to escape the standard lectures about the responsibilities of a jounin teacher, the academy teacher's overview of this term's graduates, and for the Hokage to announce the balanced team makeups he and the teachers had decided on. The other jounin would only be beginning to fight over the teams. Kakashi paused as he landed on the windowsill outside the meeting room to get a handle on the situation. It looked like Yamanaka Haruka was trying to pry a team away from Sarutobi Asuma. It was futile. Asuma had enough seniority over the recently promoted blonde Kunoichi that it wasn't funny. Asuma had his back to the window, and Kakashi glanced over his shoulder at the student files spread out in front of him and snorted. Yamanaka was doubly foolish. The first Hokage himself had established the policy that no genin team would be taught by a clanmate of any of the students. Deciding the Hokage would probably appreciate the interruption, Kakashi stopped hiding his presence and tapped loudly on the glass of the window. An instant later, Asuma spun around in his seat and opened it. Kakashi hopped inside. You're early, Kakashi, Asuma said easily. There's actually more than one team unclaimed. Kakashi gave a half shrug, smiling with his visible eye. He said. I found a shortcut. Will wonders never cease, another jounin muttered under his breath. The Hokage sighed loudly, and all eyes turned to him. You're not going to be able to do this when I'm gone, Kakashi-kun, he said. My teachers would have killed you by now. You'll still be in charge when we're all long dead, Hokage-sama, Kakashi replied cheerfully. The old man snorted. I doubt that, he said. He waved over at where one of the academy teachers for this class was seated, trios of folders spread out on the table before him. Where was the other teacher? You've got seniority, the Hokage continued. You can take the next pick. Kakashi gave another shrug. Whichever team has Uzumaki on it, he said. I'll take that one. The whole room was silent, and Kakashi suddenly felt like he'd walked into a trap. Ridiculous. Kakashi, Funino Daikoku said with a nervous laugh from the middle of the table. You sure you don't want Uchiha instead? Kakashi's eye wandered over to him. The Uchiha? Under me? He asked. The whole clan will come back from the dead just to avenge the insult. He turned back to the Hokage. Uzumaki, he repeated. We both know you aren't going to deny me him, Hokage-sama, so hand his team over. Why do you want Kushina-sensei's kid so much? A woman seated at the far end of the table, waiting for her turn to pick a team, asked. Kakashi only vaguely recognized her, the only one to make full jounin from the last round of promotion board hearings. I wanted. None of your business, Kakashi said curtly. And you'll take whichever team is left when we're done. Be nice to Yuhi-kun, Kakashi, Asuma chided. Kakashi ignored him. The Hokage puffed on his pipe before speaking. Daikoku-kun has a point, Kakashi-kun, he observed. If anyone here can help Uchiha-kun awaken his inheritance and learn to use it, it'll be you. He glanced sideways at the academy teacher. Who were his teammates, Iraka-kun? He asked. The scarred Chunin shuffled the folders in front of him. Aburame and Inuzuka, Hokage-sama, he answered. Not interested, Kakashi said. Don't play games, Hokage-sama. All right, the Hokage said, smiling a smile that Kakashi didn't trust 1 inch. The old man acted like a harmless old fool half the time, but Kakashi well remembered that he hadn't been called the god of shinobi just for his battle prowess. There really was a trap, and he'd walked into it, played like a well-tuned instrument. The Hokage continued, Iraka-kun, switch Uchiha and Hyuga, and give Kakashi-kun Team 7. There was a sudden intake of breath from the other jounin. Yes, sir. The Chunin held out the folders, but Kakashi just stared at the bottom one. Red tape around the edges marked it as top secret, and a security seal held it closed. There was only one student whose folder that could be. Uzumaki, Uchiha, and Harino? Kakashi asked disgustedly. I asked you to stop playing games. That's not a team, that's a bad joke. It was a joke in remarkably poor taste. Kakashi had thought better of the Hokage. Do you have a problem with my decision, Kakashi-kun? The Hokage asked quietly, in that deceptive tone of voice that Kakashi knew meant the old man was disappointed. He puffed on his pipe as he waited for an answer. There's so many different reasons to object to that combination I don't even know where to begin, Kakashi replied. He couldn't air most of them in this company anyway. The Hokage smiled around his pipe. I like the combination. It's a little nostalgic. Had the old man finally gone senile? Asuma shifted in his seat. They aren't their mothers, Hokage-sama, he said uncomfortably. And those 3 weren't on the same genin team anyway. Kakashi was grateful for the support, but it was clear it wouldn't do any good. All right, he said, grabbing the folders from the uncomfortable-looking academy teacher. He'd give them the same test he always gave. And when if they failed, he'd pick up Naruto again in the next cycle. Kushina would understand. If they passed well, that might just be a sign that the Hokage was right. There was only one way to find out, wasn't there? The Hokage nodded. Iraka-kun, please give Kurinai-kun Team 8. That drew a protest from one of the other jounin, but it was cut off at a stern look from the Hokage. If he wanted to directly assign a team, who was going to argue with him? Thank you, Hokage-sama, the woman who'd questioned Kakashi about his interest in Naruto replied. That was a team far more promising than a fresh jounin might have ordinarily claimed. Clearly the Hokage was favoring her, probably for being obviously willing to take on the Harino girl as a student. Kakashi turned to leave, but was stopped by a cough from the Hokage. I'll need to speak with you, after the meeting, the old man said. Understood, Kakashi replied, and then he left. He arrived at the Hokage's office only an hour after the meeting let out. Why this team, really? Kakashi asked without wasting time on preliminaries. The obvious reasons, Kakashi-kun, Sarutobi replied tiredly. There's no terrible hidden agenda. He paused. Well, not one that concerns you. I'm doing a favor for Kushina-chan. Kakashi pondered that. That explains the Uchiha. Not him, Sarutobi said. His mouth twisted. You know Kushina-chan and Mikoto-san weren't the best of friends by the end. Haruno? Kakashi asked. Kushina-sama asked what was she thinking? Your teacher, Sarutobi said harshly, wanted her to be seen as a hero, not a monster. Kushina-chan stands by that wish. Will you? There was only one answer Kakashi could give to that. I'll give this team the same chance I always give, he said. If they deserve to be my students, they'll pass it. His teacher would be disappointed in him otherwise. Sarutobi grunted once. There's another matter. Yesterday evening, Academy teacher Kato Mizuki and Genin Tsurugi Misumi attempted to steal the Scroll of Seals. Haruno Sakura became involved, and she discovered the truth about what happened to the Nine Tails. I see, Kakashi said. Mizuki is cooperating with our investigation, Sarutobi continued. He was apparently at least partially being coerced. We've been following the thread from Tsurugi. He's dead? Kakashi asked. Sarutobi nodded. We picked up his teammate, Akadi Yoroi. Ibiki is on him, but he doesn't seem to know much. His memories may have been erased before we got to him. Third team member? Dead in Ricefield Country almost a year ago and never replaced, the Hokage answered. Their current squad leader has vanished. I'm adding him to the bingo book as a missing ninja. Why are you telling me all this? Kakashi asked. That Haruno knows the truth is my concern, but the rest. The Hokage sighed. It isn't totally clear, he said, but it seems Haruno-kun may have also been a target. There may be further attempts. He paused. It's just a hunch at this point, but I'm concerned this might be my mistake coming home to roost. Orochimaru, Kakashi guessed. Keep an eye out, Kakashi-kun, Sarutobi said. And keep your students safe. Kakashi smiled behind his mask. I always take care of my comrades, he reminded the old man. I should get going. I need to read their files and prepare to meet them tomorrow. With such a unique team, maybe this set of introductions would be less inane than the ones from the teams he'd failed before. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I like being a ninja and my mom and old man Hokage and Konohamaru and Hinata-chan and Tuchi-san and Ayam-san from Ichiraku Ramen and… I think I have the picture, Naruto-kun. Okay, Kakashi-sensei. I don't like secrets I'm not ready for, and my dream is to become a medical ninja surpassing Tsunadeheim and heal my mother. After he dismissed his provisional team, Kakashi went to the hospital without delay for a meeting he couldn't be late for. Visiting hours there were strict, and even he would not violate those rules frivolously. No sane man wanted to antagonize any of the medical ninja who had built the finest hospital in the known world in Tsunade's name, even if none of them had inherited her fearsome strength. Others might beg to differ when they thought he wasn't around to object, but Kakashi counted himself among the ranks of the sane. Besides, Uzumaki Kushina was perhaps the only person living who had as great a claim on Kakashi's time as the dead. For her, his ghost could wait, and he would always be there as soon as she was allowed visitors. He took the stern lectures against overstressing the patient with as much grace as he could, and then he was allowed into the room where Kushina was recovering. It always hurt to see her like this, pale and weak. He still gave her a cheery smile behind his mask, one obvious enough that even his new students should have been able to notice it. Kushina gave him a short, choking laugh. Don't strain those poor disused muscles on my account, Kakashi-kun. With the ease of long practice, Kakashi ignored the horrible croaking sound of the red-headed woman's ruined voice. What can I say, Kushina-sama? He said lightly as he seated himself on a chair next to her bed. I can't help it. Kushina shook her head. I assume you're here to talk with me about Naruto. That can wait, Kakashi said, his face and his voice turning serious. Are you all right, Kushina-sama? The medics didn't seem too worried, but he trailed off. Ever since that horrible day, Kushina had suffered from the injuries the Nine Tails had given her. Even the legendary Tsunade had only been able to save her life, not restore her to health. Naruto had been almost 4 years old before she'd been able to leave the hospital, and she'd spent more than any mother should of the rest of her son's life back here. She grimaced. I just overexerted myself, she said. Tried to channel a little too much chakra. You shouldn't be doing that at all, Kushina-sama, Kakashi said without thinking. He regretted the words as he spoke them. Kushina hated being reminded like that of the strength she had lost. The demon's poisonous chakra had all but destroyed her chakra coils, Tsunade had told him and the old man 12 years ago, and Kushina would never be able to be a ninja again, much less recover to take the title of 5th Hokage like Sarutobi had hoped. Nothing the medics had been able to do since then had changed that prognosis. For once, Kushina just sighed. I know, she said, but it seemed a good idea at the time. Now, what about my son? I'm sure you forced Sarutobi to give him to you. You haven't failed him already, have you? Kakashi accepted the change of subject and laughed. They won't have the chance to fail until tomorrow, he said. You haven't told Naruto about the bell test, have you? He scratched the back of his head. It would be embarrassing to have to go begging to Asuma to find out what kind of tests everyone else uses. Of course not, Kushina replied. Minato would never forgive me. They were silent for a while. So, who are Naruto's teammates? Kushina prompted eventually. Uchiha Sasuke for one, Kakashi said after a moment, then waited for Kushina's reaction. There had indeed been bad blood between her and the Uchiha boy's mother. You don't need to wait for an outburst, Kushina said, her harsh voice quiet. That kunai is long buried and was never aimed at Sasuke-kun. As you say, Kakashi said, but he hesitated before naming the third member of the team. The Hokage had implied that Kushina had requested the girl be placed on Naruto's team, but Kakashi still couldn't figure out why. It was a move that could have many motives. The other member is Haruno Sakura. Kushina's eyes widened in surprise. What? She croaked out. I was under the impression you requested it, Kakashi said, his own eye narrowing as he considered. Hokage-sama said it was a favor to you. Kushina's lips pressed tightly together for a second before she answered. Damn old man, she whispered under her breath, but loudly enough for Kakashi to hear. Stop interfering. What is it? Kakashi asked. Kushina shook her head, anger still clear on her face. That's between me and Sarutobi, she answered. I can try to have her reassigned, Kakashi offered, already planning. That Yuhi woman had been willing, right? If he could come up with something to sweeten the pot, he might still be able to trade Haruno for Inuzuka, or maybe even Hyuga. There was a lot an ally like him could do for a fresh jounin, if he bothered to exert himself on her behalf. No, Kushina said firmly. She coughed once. They already know the teams, don't they? She doesn't deserve that kind of indignity, Kakashi-kun. Are you sure? Kakashi asked. Kushina struggled for a moment to sit up in bed before falling back. You don't hate that girl, do you? She asked quietly. She isn't the Ninetales. You should know that. Of course I know that, Kakashi said. But that doesn't mean I want her on Naruto's team. Or his, really. I trust the seal, your work and Minato-sensei's, but I've never heard of one of her kind that wasn't a danger to everyone around them. Kushina was silent, and Kakashi continued, I saw the Four Tails at Bellflower Pass. He paused, remembering. That thing killed as many rock as leaf once he started throwing lava techniques around. I don't want that to happen to Naruto. He didn't shudder, because he was a jounin ninja, but he wanted to as he thought of the sheer power of the Nine Tails. The power that poor girl would inevitably draw upon, that he would have to try and help her learn to control. The power that had killed so many, that had crippled the woman lying in front of him. The redhead was still silent. Kushina-sama? Kakashi asked carefully. She looked away, not letting Kakashi see her face. I see, was all she said. Kakashi wasn't sure what to say, but he was saved as he heard two people approaching Kushina's room. Unfamiliar footsteps, not Naruto or the Hokage. Kushina heard them too, he could tell, her whole body suddenly tensing. Kakashi stood, wondering who could provoke that reaction. There was a light tapping on the door, and a silver-haired boy in an assistant medic's white uniform stuck his head into the room. Uzumaki-sama, he said respectfully, pushing up his glasses with one gloved hand. You have another visitor. Send him in, Kushina said tightly, her voice almost cracking. Kakashi frowned. It wasn't like her to react like this to anyone. Help me sit up, Kakashi-kun. He did, arranging her pillows to support her back, as the door opened wider, revealing a dark-haired man with startling bright green eyes, who Kakashi recognized from the files he'd been studying the night before. He bowed slightly to the medic. Thank you for the assistance with the front desk, Yakushi-san, he said, and I'll consider your offer. Please, the boy said, call me Kabuto. With your permission, I will call on you later in the week, Haruno-san. Then call me Takaru, Kabuto-kun, the man returned, and then he stepped inside. The medic shut the door behind him. This is convenient, Kakashi said lightly to cover his surprise. Why was this man coming to visit Kushina? He shouldn't know the team makeup yet, unless he'd already spoken with his daughter. I was going to need to track you down once I was done with Kushina-sama, Haruno-san. The man grunted. Why would Sharingan Kakashi want to unless you're to be Sakura-chan's teacher? Kakashi nodded, and the man frowned, his eyes becoming hard as his gaze turned to Kushina. The woman glanced away for a moment, and the man grunted again, like he'd been hit. Impossible, he said. It was not my request, Haruno-san, Kushina said. I gave my word. What was that about now? Kakashi watched curiously as the man almost shook with anger, his fists clenching for a moment. Damn that insufferable old, he muttered under his breath before catching himself and forcing calm into his stance. He looked back at Kakashi. Who is the third member, Hataki-sama? He demanded. Uchiha Sasuke, Kakashi replied. The man's eyes flared. That's not a team, he stated furiously. That's a bad joke. Kakashi wasn't able to stop himself from laughing. Nothing, he said easily when the man glared at him. Kakashi-kun, Kushina said. Please leave us a moment. Haruno-san and I need to discuss something in private. That can wait a moment, Takara said. He turned to Kakashi. I don't know what you've heard or think about my daughter, Hataki-sama, he said, no respect in his voice despite the form of address. But I am begging you to treat her as you would any other kunoichi. His voice turned genuinely pleading. You know this, I'm sure. She just found out, the day before yesterday, and she's taking it badly. Don't hurt her. Please. There were tears in his eyes, and he bowed his head slightly. Kakashi didn't say anything, sensing the man wasn't done talking. After several seconds, Takara spoke again, his voice now hard. And if there is an unfortunate training accident, or if you come back from a mission with some story about how you weren't able to save her, I won't care if the Hokage believes you. I won't care that you're Sharingan Kakashi and I'm a career genin. I won't care that it would be treason. I will kill you. Do you understand? Kakashi wanted to laugh, but didn't. Ninja who don't follow the rules are trash, Haruno-san, he said coldly. Then he smiled with his visible eye. But ninja who don't take care of their comrades are worse than trash. I'll forgive the insult this once. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I dislike most things, and there's nothing in particular I like. Hey, don't say that, you bastard. You gotta like me, huh? Shut up, Naruto. I won't reduce it to a mere dream, but I do have a goal, to restore the Uchiha clan and to kill a certain person. Ooh, spooky. Shut up, Naruto. When Kakashi was done talking to Kushina and Takaru, he left them to their own conversation. A glare from the red-headed woman convinced him not to eavesdrop. He wandered by the Hokage Tower and confirmed with one of the administrators that the third training ground was available tomorrow, which he probably should have done before telling his students to meet him there. Oh well. Then he found a nice spot on a rooftop with a view and read for a while. It should have been a pleasant way to pass the remainder of the afternoon, but Kakashi wasn't able to concentrate on the book. He muttered an apology to Jiraiya as he slipped it away and stared at the sky for a few moments. He had, actually for the first time in all the times the Hokage had forced him to take a team, done what he was supposed to do after meeting with his students, and discussed them with their guardians. A part of him felt like the only way to make up for that was not show up tomorrow, but he pushed that thought aside and focused on the real reason for his discomfort. One of his students had no guardian for him to speak with, beyond perhaps the Hokage himself. Uchiha Sasuke, huh? Kakashi said out loud, his eye idly following an ANBU patrol moving from rooftop to rooftop. He knew why the Hokage wanted the boy on his team. The reason he had given was both obvious and hard to disagree with. The facts that the boy had been orphaned at a young age, was considered a prodigy, and was far too serious for his own good were simply coincidence, Kakashi was sure the Hokage would say. If the Uchiha boy just happened to remind his new teacher of a certain Hatake Kakashi as he'd been when he'd been shoved onto a team, that was beside the point. He supposed that would make Naruto well, despite the gender and his more boisterous personality, it would be Rin, wouldn't it? She'd always cared deeply, despite how easily she let people into her heart. That was why she jumped at the opportunity to learn medical ninjutsu. Was Haruno somehow supposed to be a Bito, then? Kakashi snorted at that. It was almost as ludicrous as imagining himself as his teacher. Namikaze Minato was not a person he had any dream of matching as a ninja or as a teacher. Kakashi could only hope that he wouldn't be too disappointed in him. He sighed. Kakashi stood, and went where he always went when this mood came on him, and spent the next several hours visiting with his ghosts. He left the memorial stone in a better mood, and as the sun finishing slipping out of sight, he decided it would be appropriate this once for him to visit with someone else's ghosts. That was how he found himself in the graveyard of the Uchiha clan, before the memorial marker of Uchiha Fugaku and his wife. Feeling somewhat awkward, he muttered a quiet prayer for the Uchiha clan head. The man had been unlikable at the best of times, but Kakashi still owed Fugaku. As the head of the Uchiha, he would have been well within his rights to demand that Obito's eye be destroyed. Yet after hearing Minato's report, all the man had done was grunt, then assign an Uchiha medic to inspect the transplant and instruct Kakashi in the basics of using the Sharingan. That Fugaku and the Uchiha clan had never let him or Minato forget how generous they had been that day did not change the fact that they had been generous. "I'll be taking care of your son for a little while, Fugaku-san," Kakashi told the gravestone. "Maybe only for a day," he admitted, "but maybe a while longer too." He bowed his head. "I cannot promise that I will teach him as you would have, or even how you would have wanted." Kakashi hesitated. "But I will promise to do my best to turn him into a shinobi and a man both the Uchiha and the Hidden Leaf can be proud of. That would have to be good enough." He glanced at Uchiha Mikoto's name, engraved next to her husband's. "It may please you," he told her, "to know that Kushina-sama's son and Amaya-san's daughter are to be Sasuke-kun's teammates. Or perhaps not. The dead did not share whether they still held grudges. If it doesn't," he added lightly, "you may address your complaints to Hokage-sama." Then he heard footsteps approaching, and he relocated himself to a nearby tree to watch Uchiha Sasuke kneel before his parents' grave. "Father, mother," the boy said in greeting, and then he was silent for a long time. Part of Kakashi wanted to stay and watch, to learn more of this boy he might need to teach, but he saw the tears glittering unshed in Sasuke's dark eyes. He had intruded on the boy's ghost enough already. Kakashi had his own, and he didn't imagine the boy would like sharing any more than he did. "I'll see you tomorrow," he told Sasuke, too softly to be heard, and then he was gone, leaving the boy alone with his family. "My name is Haruno Sakura. I like my father and me in reading, I guess. I don't like people who won't leave me alone." "And your dream?" "It's I don't have one, sir." Haruno Sakura was the first of Kakashi's students to arrive at the third training ground in the morning. For a second time, Kakashi marveled at how non-threatening she seemed. The long, unbound pink hair alone made it hard for him to see her as the container of such a fearsome power as the nine-tailed demon fox. In his brief interaction with her, she'd been a quiet, sad-seeming girl, showing no sign of the infinite rage and malice that slumbered inside of her. The academy teacher's reports spoke highly of her intelligence, and surprisingly of her obedience to and respect for authority. They weren't the traits Kakashi associated with her kind, he had to admit. To take the ostracism she had suffered under so quietly spoke of her character, but did it speak to her strength, or to her weakness? And what changes would the revelation of the truth about her cause? Despite the academy teacher's words, she was going to be a troublesome student if she passed. Kakashi was sure of it. He stayed concealed near the top of a tree as Uchiha Sasuke arrived precisely on time, and he didn't stir as Uzumaki Naruto joined his teammates a little less than 5 minutes later. Now the test would begin, even if the three children didn't realize it. One genin team had failed here, dispersing only a half hour after the test started. It wasn't merely for leaving that he'd failed them, of course. It was because they had left individually and gone their separate ways without making any plans to meet again. No significant words passed between his students, but they at least did settle down to wait as a team. Kakashi noted, though, that the girl kept Sasuke between her and Naruto at all times. He also noted the longing glances she sent the dark-haired boy when he wasn't looking, and the twisted, confused and angry expression that marred Naruto's face when he looked at Sakura. There was history there, clearly, even if it was only their parents' seemingly hostile relationship poisoning them against each other. Sasuke just stood stoically between them, ignoring the subdued antics of his teammates. Unsurprising, Kakashi thought, but it remained to be seen what lay underneath the cold facade. Sometimes, it was the most unfriendly-seeming genin who came the closest to passing his test. People were complicated like that. Kakashi half-read his book as he watched the three kids realize that their teacher wasn't showing up. It took about an hour for Naruto to wander over to the base of a tree and start napping. Kakashi almost gave an amused grunt at that, not sure whether he was trusting his teammates to wake him or just not considering that a teacher might not be thrilled to find him asleep. A while later, Sakura opened her mouth, as though she was about to say something to Sasuke, but when the boy turned to look at her she shook her head and looked away. "Nothing," she mumbled, her cheeks flushing, when Sasuke gave her an interrogative grunt. She turned away from her obvious crush. Then she froze, shocked still. Kakashi followed her gaze to the memorial stone, positioned on the edge of the training ground. Please call me if sensei comes, Sasuke-kun," she said, drawing another curious grunt from the Uchiha. Then she started walking toward the memorial. Kakashi followed, silently moving to a tree overlooking her as Sakura stood in front of the inscribed names. She shook with some contained emotion, and spoke, so quietly even Kakashi had to strain to understand her. "I'm sorry," she said, bowing her head. Kakashi's eye widened, an unfamiliar feeling of guilt growing in him. He used this training ground for every team, but the girl didn't know that, and among the dead commemorated here were those who died defending the village from the Nine Tails. Did she think this location was a message or a warning to her? Sakura's hand reached out, hovering over the section where those dead were listed, before rubbing one name. Kakashi well recalled that list, and it wasn't hard for him to guess what name she sought out. He wondered if Haruno Amaya had known before she died the fate that awaited her daughter. "I'm sorry," the pink-haired girl said again. "I am not," she trailed off, and Kakashi could see tears escaping her eyes. He also saw the boy approaching long before her. "Sakura-chan," Naruto said as he drew near, his teammates starting in surprise. The blonde glanced at Sakura's hand, still resting on the list of names. "Your mother?" he asked, his voice tight and something unreadable to Kakashi in his expression. Sakura dropped her hand and didn't say anything. She took a step away from the boy, but Naruto closed the distance. "My mother," Naruto said, "won't tell me anything more." Sakura was still silent. "I know you aren't supposed to talk to me," Naruto continued, "but I have to know what my mom isn't like that. I can't believe she would do something like that." What was the boy talking about? And Sakura was forbidden from speaking to him? There were clearly words that needed to be had with Haruno Takaru. "Please," Naruto pleaded. "Tell me what you know. I'll promise never to bother you again, if that's what it takes." "Father says I'm allowed to talk to you now," Sakura said. "Since we're teammates. You don't want to talk to me?" Naruto asked. "I guess I understand." The two were silent for a moment, then Sakura spoke again. "There isn't anything else I know," she said. "All father told me is that your mother killed mine." Kakashi almost fell out of the tree. What nonsense was that man filling his daughter's head with? Kushina had to be told. "Mom wouldn't tell me anything else either," Naruto said. Just that you weren't lying and had every right to be angry." Kakashi pursed his lips. What the hell kind of game was Kushina playing? The Nine-Tails had killed Haruno Amaya. He could see why Takaru wouldn't want to tell Sakura what had killed her mother, but why would he pick such a story? And why would Kushina play along with it? What was going on between those two? "What are you mumbling about with dead last, Naruto?" Uchiha Sasuke asked as he walked up to join his teammates. The girl visibly shrank into herself at his words, her eyes finding her feet and not leaving them. "Hey, bastard," Naruto replied. "You shouldn't talk to Sakura-chan like that. We're teammates now, aren't we?" Sakura glanced up, shock clear in her green eyes as she stared at the blonde boy. "Naruto-san?" she asked confusedly. Sasuke just snorted. Kakashi decided that it was time to put in an appearance. "You aren't where I told you to wait," he said, placing a hand on the Uchiha's shoulder. The boy almost jumped out of his shoes, and Kakashi smirked behind his mask. Sakura let out a quiet eep before saying, "I'm sorry, it was my..." Naruto interrupted her, pointing at Kakashi in obvious anger. "You're late!" he roared, and Kakashi laughed. Rin would never have been so impolite, although he was sure she'd wanted to scream at Obito more than a few times. He led the three genin back onto the training ground, and gave his usual speech explaining the bell test. None of them seemed to grasp that the 1/3 failure rate implied by the test was different than the 2/3 rate he told them of yesterday, but no genin ever had. Then he waited a moment to see if anyone was going to try a sneak attack before the test officially started. That had happened twice. No one moved to strike, and Kakashi waved his hand in a vague gesture. "Start," he ordered, and Sakura and Sasuke jumped away to find cover. He stared blankly at Naruto, then disrupted the replication with a lightning-fast poke of his finger. "You can't forget that replications don't cast shadows, Naruto-kun," Kakashi said chidingly. His eye darted about, quickly locating his students, Sasuke in a tree, Sakura in the underbrush, and Naruto in the lake, using a hollow reed to breathe. Not bad. Kakashi waited a few moments, but none of the three genin stirred. "There is a time limit, you remember," he told them, hoping to draw one out, but no one took the bait. He sighed loudly, pulling out a thin, gray volume, and squatted down to read, deliberately putting his back to Naruto's hiding place. A cloud passed over the sun, and Naruto finally moved, 5 replications bursting out of the water and surrounding Kakashi. The grass not moving as they passed gave them away, but Kakashi gave him points for patiently waiting until the lack of shadows wouldn't be an issue. He stood, but he didn't put away his book. "Well?" he asked the replications. One took a step forward, and Kakashi let himself be driven back toward the real Naruto, as though he didn't know the replications were all insubstantial images. In about 3 seconds the blonde boy jumped out of the lake, grabbing Kakashi from behind. The now useless replications disappeared in clouds of gray smoke. "Got you, Kakashi-sensei!" the boy exclaimed. The Jounin faked surprise, staying still in his student's grasp. "Your arms are busy," he told Naruto. "How are you going to achieve your objective?" He shook the bells at his hip for emphasis, then flipped to the next page in his book. You don't have time to read that, Naruto shouted, then his foot came up, trying to kick the bells loose of Kakashi. Instead, the Jounin slipped out of the hold, grabbing Naruto's foot and tossing him back into the lake. Prove it, Kakashi told the sputtering boy as he pulled himself out of the water, then the Jounin walked away. He caught the shuriken the boy tossed with 2 fingers, letting the weapon spin a few moments before slipping them into his pouch. What would the boy try next? Catch this, Naruto growled from behind Kakashi, hurling a kunai. Kakashi took his student's advice and smiled behind his mask at the explosive tag dangling from the hilt. It was real, but on a long fuse and not high power. Naruto wasn't taking the instruction to try and kill him very seriously yet. So Kakashi used the replacement technique, switching places with the boy and leaving the kunai back in his student's hands. He relocated to a treetop over Naruto's head as the boy quickly withdrew his chakra from the tag to defuse it. Admirable reflexes, and no doubt a testament to Kushina's training, saving Kakashi the trouble of intervening to keep him from getting hurt. He approved, and rewarded the boy by putting his book away, even if Naruto couldn't see it. He needed to end this, so he could work on the other 2. He checked and saw that both were still hidden, watching the fight and no doubt waiting for Kakashi to show an opening. Kakashi deliberately shook one of the bells, letting it ring loudly. In an instant, Naruto was jumping up into the tree, ascending so quickly Kakashi almost thought that he'd instinctively mastered using chakra to walk up the trunk. When he reached Kakashi, this time the Jounin didn't play much, quickly leaving the boy strung up by his foot, hanging from a low tree branch. Kakashi jumped to the ground. Strategy lesson, he said as he looked up at Naruto. Frontal assaults against superior foes are a good way to lose. The boy grumbled something at that, but Kakashi's attention was on the hidden Sasuke as he deliberately left an opening for the other boy to exploit. In came in a swarm of kunai, easily evaded with the replacement technique, but Kakashi grinned as he saw that the Uchiha had taken the real bait. Another kunai had severed the rope holding Naruto, dropping the blonde roughly on the ground, and the 2 boys had quickly moved back into the trees. Kakashi could almost make out a muttered strategy session going on between the 2, and he smiled. 3 times 2 of his genin had teamed up, but that was the easy part, since there were 2 bells. It was adding the 3rd team member which was critical. With that thought in mind, Kakashi turned his attention to Sakura. You want to come out, Sakura-kun? He asked loudly, ringing the bells at his side. Instead, the girl faded further back into the woods. Kakashi thought for a moment, then pulled out his book and followed. Let the boys have some privacy to prepare a battleground. A few minutes later, Kakashi found the pink-haired girl perched on a low tree branch, all her attention focused on her teacher, as he walked past below. Sakura slowly drew a kunai. Kakashi helpfully paused, turning a page in his book. It still took the girl too long to attack, and the throw was ill-aimed. It would have only scratched Kakashi's arm. Instead, Kakashi disappeared without even a puff of smoke, drawing a startled gasp from Sakura. He landed on the branch next to her, his eyes still focused on his book. Looking for someone, Sakura-kun? He asked calmly. His student scrambled away, pressing her back to the tree trunk. A replication? But the shadow and the genjutsu, Kakashi decided to explain. But it could have also been a water replication, or a dozen other things. He flipped another page. Sakura's eyes followed the motion, and then her hands twitched. Is that an advanced reading copy of the next gutsy shinobi book? Kakashi finished for her. Well, she had listed reading as one of her likes. Yep. You're a fan? The girl nodded, staring hungrily at the slim, gray volume. Maybe I'll let you borrow it when I'm done, if you answer a question. Sir? You said you didn't have a dream, but what you meant was that you didn't have one anymore, right, Sakura-kun? Kakashi asked. So what was your dream, He let his eye lazily wander over her. The dream you decided to abandon when you found out the truth. Sakura was silent for a long while, and Kakashi wondered if the direct approach had been the wrong one to take. My dream? She asked quietly. Why do you care? I don't really, Kakashi lied. But there's this form I have to fill out when I evaluate a team, you see. My dream, Sakura said, not looking at Kakashi, was to become a strong kunoichi of the leaf, a hero, so my father and my mother would be proud of me, and no one would hate me anymore. She looked up, her eyes wet. But that's never going to happen, is it? Not if you fail here, Kakashi said, letting the bells at his side jingle. Are you going to try to pass? He asked. Sakura visibly steeled herself, then jumped at him, a clumsy attempt that Kakashi didn't have to try to avoid. She sailed past him, landing on the ground in an awkward roll. Kakashi sighed, putting away his book and jumping down to stand in front of her. Low marks, Sakura-kun. Does it matter? She asked as she stood. She looked away from him again. You're a jounin. There's nothing I could do to get a bell unless you let me. And you aren't going to, are you? Nope, Kakashi agreed easily. At least she was thinking about things. Maybe with a push she'd figure out the test. Combat skills could be learned easily enough. The ability to see underneath the underneath was harder to teach. Are you going to let Sasuke-kun and Naruto-san get them? No one is going to pass this test unless they earn it, Kakashi answered her. Sakura looked at her feet. I understand, she said, what this test is really about. Kakashi let his eye widen. Oh, really? He asked slowly. Why don't you explain it for the class, Sakura-kun? It isn't hard, Hataki-sama, the girl answered. This is supposed to be a 3-man team, but the test is set up so only 2 can pass. So it is, Kakashi agreed, as though that had never occurred to him. I wonder why that is? He asked thoughtfully. She was so close, tantalizing so. Please don't mock me, Sakura said, and Kakashi noticed her struggling to hold back tears. I might be dead last, but I'm not stupid. I know you aren't, Kakashi agreed. So what have you figured out? Sakura was silent for a moment. I'll spare us both from wasting any more time, she said. Then in one smooth motion she untied her forehead protector from around her head and held it out to Kakashi. In all the times he had taken a team, a part of him noted, this had never happened. Here, she said. I probably never deserved this anyway. Kakashi didn't move, but he silently cursed himself. He misjudged the girl, and now she thought, damn it. It was a reasonable enough assumption, wasn't it? And a little closer to his private thoughts than he was comfortable with, knowing what his teacher had wanted for the poor girl. When he didn't move to take the forehead protector, Sakura let it drop to the ground and bowed stiffly. I understand why you don't want to teach something like me. Thank you for not embarrassing me in front of Sasuke-kun and Naruto-san. This was a fair way. She bowed again. Goodbye, Hataki-sama. She turned and started away. Kakashi bent down and picked up her forehead protector. The old man had said she knew the truth, but it didn't look like she understood it, not on an emotional level at least. Takara had said she wasn't taking it well, but something like me? Damn it all to 1,000 hells, the girl thought that she was the 9-tailed demon fox. He could almost feel his teacher's disapproving gaze resting on him. He'd really screwed this up, hadn't he? The forehead protector in Kakashi's hand felt like it weighed a ton. I'll fix this, sensei, he promised. Somehow. Then he moved. The first step would be another genjutsu, to direct Sakura's path back toward the boys. They were probably the last people she wanted to see, but they were also the best chance he had of salvaging this. If there was enough of Rin and his parents in Naruto. If Sasuke wasn't too much like a younger Kakashi, if his uncaring facade was just that. If, Kakashi realized with a sinking feeling, this team was the first in all the years he'd been taking teams to deserve to pass this test. Naruto studied the trap for a moment, then moved one of the trio of explosive tags a fraction of an inch closer to the other 2. Keeping a small flow of chakra moving through the safety seals with one hand, he began to brush dirt lightly over the pressure-activated tags with the other. Was it enough to fool Kakashi? Almost certainly not, if he wasn't distracted. Hurry up, Sasuke complained from a safe distance behind Naruto. Dead last isn't going to keep Kakashi-sensei busy for much longer. I told you not to call her that, bastard, Naruto griped back at his friend, not speeding up in the slightest. Haste and explosive tags did not make a pleasant combination. You're one to talk, Sasuke replied. I have a name, you know. Stop being a bastard to people, and I'll use it, too, Naruto stated reasonably. Now stop distracting me. If I screw up the positioning, the resonance will mess up the timing, and there's no way we'll catch a jounin. Naruto could almost feel the other boy shake his head. How the hell you can do all that and still fail every single math test, I'll never know. The blonde grinned as he finished hiding the seals. Math tests don't explode, he commented. Then he stopped the flow of chakra and jumped backward, getting out of range before the safety seals deactivated. Done. He grinned, turning to face the other boy. Don't step there. Sasuke grunted. Now we just have to find Kakashi-sensei and get him back here. He'll be here soon enough, I bet, Naruto observed. This was a test, after all. Once he'd finished with Naruto, he'd gone after Sakura. That meant Sasuke had to be next. You want me out or hidden? Sasuke let out a quiet hum, as he thought. He knows we're working together, he said, since I rescued you. He paused. That means you owe me. We're going somewhere other than Ichiraka tonight when we celebrate passing. Bastard, Naruto said cheerfully. No point in you trying to hide from him, Sasuke said. That might just make him realize we're doing more than just trying to gang up on him. All right, Naruto agreed. The pair were silent a moment. Barbecue? Naruto asked. Works, Sasuke grunted, and there was another silence as they waited. This test sucks, Naruto complained. What the hell is up with only 2 people passing? That's a shitty way to start off a team. If he comes back with only 1 bell, Sasuke said, I'm not letting you have it. He snorted. Not that that's likely. She's not even going to touch one, not if you couldn't. Naruto frowned. You don't have to be so mean, he said. What's she ever done to you? Sasuke gave him a puzzled look. Nothing, but it's the truth. What the hell do you care? She hates you, doesn't she? Yeah, Naruto said. But I don't hate her. He paused, searching for words. You don't have a crush on Haruno, do you? Sasuke asked disgustedly. Come on. That's not it, Naruto said. But you should be nicer to her. She's our teammate. Not for much longer, Sasuke said. He snorted. Naruto sighed, glancing at where his trap was hidden. I suppose, he said. But you don't have to be mean. Why do you care? Sasuke asked again. My family owes hers a debt, Naruto said. His mother had told him that, years ago, when he'd first mentioned Sakura's name to her, and she'd asked him to invite the pink-haired girl over for dinner. Now that he knew what that debt was, he wasn't surprised at her refusal. He would have to convince Hinata to forgive Sakura for shunning him, he realized. She'd had good enough reason. One I'm not sure can be repaid. Sasuke stared at him for a moment. Oh, hell no. You're not planning on giving her your bell, are you? When Naruto didn't answer, the other boy punched him in the shoulder. Hey, Naruto protested. Idiot, Sasuke said. Do you think that's going to work? This is a test of skill. Why do you even think Kakashi-sensei is going to care what you do with your bell once we get them off of him? Naruto hadn't considered that. I can still try, he said. I won't let you, Sasuke said. Before he could say anything more, both boys looked up. Someone's coming, Naruto said unnecessarily. He took a step backward, watching as Sasuke moved into position. The Uchiha would engage Kakashi and lure him onto the trap Naruto had prepared. When the explosions disoriented him, Naruto would catch the Jounin with his technique, which would give them a chance to grab the bells. It was a simple enough plan. He didn't expect it to be Sakura that slowly walked onto the battleground they'd prepared, staring at her own feet and seemingly not paying any attention to where she was going. Oh, it's you, Sasuke said, relaxing from the battle stance he'd fallen into. The pink-haired girl looked up in surprise, apparently having not noticed either boy, but didn't quite meet the Uchiha's eyes as she stammered out his name. Naruto blinked, pointing at her. Sakura-chan, your forehead protector. Where is it? A transformation with a deliberate flaw? Would Kakashi be so obvious? Sasuke immediately tensed, realizing the same possibility. Sakura looked away from the boys. I gave it to Hataki-sama. But that's the symbol that you've become. A Naruto trailed off as he realized what her action meant. He failed you? Sasuke asked. Did he say whether we still had to get the bells? Naruto shot the other boy a glare that he ignored. I gave up. Sakura didn't look up. I think you still have to get the bells, Sasuke-kun, she answered the second question quietly. Good luck. I need to go home. She took a step forward. Naruto's eyes widened. Sakura-chan, don't, it was too late, and Naruto moved without thinking, tackling the girl and shielding her with his body as the trap detonated. The force of the blast sent him flying, dust and debris slamming into his back with a force stronger than 10 of Sasuke's punches. He landed hard, on top of Sakura, the wind knocked out of him. He could hear Sasuke's muttered curse and his footsteps as he ran up to where Naruto and Sakura lay, but for the moment all the blonde's concern was on the girl. You okay, Sakura-chan? He asked. He tried to hide the wince of pain as he spoke. Had he broken something? I'm not hurt, she said haltingly. Naruto managed to roll himself off of her, and Sakura pushed herself away, sitting up as Sasuke reached them. Idiots, the Uchiha snarled as he bent down over Naruto. How bad? He asked curtly. Naruto found a painkiller in his pouch and swallowed the pill. Been worse, he said as he managed to sit up himself. Why? Naruto almost didn't hear the whispered question, and he turned to Sakura to find the girl almost curled up into a ball, arms wrapped around her legs. Sorry, Sakura-chan, Naruto said, forcing a grin on his face. We should have warned you. It's a trap we set for. Why did you save me? She asked, interrupting. Sasuke let out a half-amused, half-irritated sound. This idiot would probably have leapt in to save Kakashi-sensei if he faked fear. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Gee, thanks, bastard. I'll have to remember that, Kakashi said cheerfully. Gah! Naruto would have jumped up in surprise if the movement hadn't started to hurt so much. He turned to see the Jounin perched on a low tree limb. Sakura's forehead protector dangled from one hand. In the other he held open that stupid book. Why did everyone think he had to be a fan of that series just because the title character shared his name? Sasuke was moving, running toward the tree, but Kakashi stopped him, closing the book and sticking it under his arm before holding up his now empty hand in a warning gesture. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun, he said, his voice suddenly cold and hard. Your mission objectives have changed. Huh? Naruto asked. The bells no longer rested on Kakashi's hip, he realized. Kakashi pointed at Sakura. The girl made a distressed sound and stood on shaky legs, backing herself up against a tree trunk. She was absolutely terrified, Naruto realized. Your teammate, Kakashi said, has chosen to abandon the mission in desert. Kill her, and you'll become genin. Sakura let out a frightened moan. The hell? Naruto asked, forcing himself to stand. Do you think we're in bloody mist or something? You one-eyed bastard wasn't the right word. Sasuke was a bastard sometimes. This Kakashi was just trash, Naruto finished. Sasuke was tense, Naruto could tell, but he didn't move and all his attention was focused on their so-called teacher. Kakashi almost seemed amused for a second, but he was all business as he dropped down to the ground. I suppose I'll take care of it myself if you don't have the guts. He took a step forward. Once I'm done disposing of the corpse, we can restart the test with just you two. Naruto took a deliberate step over to stand in front of Sakura. Run, he told her. Go to the hospital. Find my mom. She'll stop this. Why your mother? Just do it. Naruto snapped. Then there was a feeling of terrible pressure, forcing him to his knees. Sakura collapsed behind him, moaning again. This is a Jounin's killing intent? Naruto asked. I'm not impressed. Be silent, brat, Kakashi said coldly. Katon, great fireball technique. The Jounin leapt away, seconds before the massive, rolling ball of flame would have incinerated him. I'm your opponent, Sasuke said, his voice matching their teacher's chill. Uchiha Sasuke, the Jounin stated, taking his stupid book out from under his arm and slipping it back into his pouch, defending a missing ninja. I'm surprised. Sasuke almost shook. Don't make a mockery of the damage done by real traitors, by comparing dead last there with them. His hand started to move through more seals. Kakashi was behind him. I suppose it is your turn, he allowed, before striking out with one hand, Sakura's forehead protector snapping at the Uchiha like a whip. Sasuke rolled away from the blow, but then Kakashi was behind him again. You can't let your opponent keep on attacking from the rear, their teacher chided, forming a seal. Sasuke! Naruto shouted the impotent warning, stumbling forward. Then he was wincing in sympathy as the other boy went flying. That was just cruel. Kakashi ignored Sasuke's pained moans, turning back to Naruto. Stand aside, Naruto-kun, he ordered, his voice perhaps a fraction softer. Fuck you, trash, Naruto said, drawing a kunai. He glanced back at Sakura, who was standing still, frozen. Run, Sakura-chan. Kakashi was charging, and there was no time to see if she obeyed. Naruto met the Jounin, striking out with his kunai. Then he was on the ground, shoved aside like he was nothing at all. Stay down, Kakashi ordered, as he took another step toward Sakura. Naruto reached out weakly at one hand, grabbing at Kakashi's foot. The Jounin ignored him, then froze. Naruto grinned. Got you, trash, he snarled. A short length of ethereal chain stretched from his hand, wrapping tightly around Kakashi's ankle. Ninpu, chakra chain snare. Naruto's other hand froze into a seal. This technique, Kakashi said, his head turning to Naruto. You can't move normally, can you? Naruto said. And even your chakra is sluggish, isn't it? This is the strength of the Uzumaki clan. He grinned. Now, Sasuke. The Jounin's eye widened a fraction of an inch, and then the Uchiha was upon him. Kakashi's reactions were slowed, but he was able to lean away, dodging the first strike of Sasuke's kunai. Naruto poured more chakra into his technique, and Sasuke's second blow struck home, the blade shoving through Kakashi's armored jacket. It wasn't a killing strike, but it would be enough to slow the Jounin down so they could get Sakura to safety. The Jounin vanished in a puff of smoke. A replication? Naruto asked aloud, letting his technique drop. It was physical, Sasuke snarled. I felt it. It's called a shadow replication, Kakashi stated as he appeared, looming over the two boys. Another wave of killing intent swept over them, vastly more powerful than what Naruto had felt before, driving even Sasuke to his knees. Give up now, he ordered, and this disloyalty can stay a secret between us. Sasuke answered before Naruto could, stealing the words. Fuck you. The Uchiha struggled, but wasn't able to stand under the pressure of Kakashi's power. The Jounin sighed, placing one hand over his face. The paperwork once I've killed you three is going to be such a pain, he griped. Last chance, boys? Naruto managed to get up on one knee. I'm not going to give up, you piece of trash. Sasuke grunted with effort as he tried again to stand. You said a test she couldn't pass, he said. A wall that couldn't be overcome. His face twisted. And you want to kill her for recognizing her limits? Stop it! Sakura's high-pitched, panicked screech made Naruto wince. Why hadn't she run? The girl, apparently not hindered by Kakashi's killing intent, stepped forward past Naruto. This isn't Sasuke-kun, Naruto-san, I'm not worth. She trailed off, and then she looked up at Kakashi, meeting his eye. Just make it quick, Hataki-sama. And don't punish them. They don't. Shut the fuck up. Naruto roared, a burst of energy propelling him to his feet. And run. This is our choice. You're our teammate, aren't you? What the hell does it make us if we just let you get killed? I'm not worth. He said to shut up, Sasuke growled. Sasuke-kun, Sakura breathed. Kakashi's killing intent redoubled, and Naruto fell back to his knees, joined an instant later by Sakura. Dark clouds suddenly filled the sky. This had to be a genjutsu, but Naruto couldn't move to try to dispel it. There's a word, Kakashi said ominously, for ninja like you, who don't follow the rules. That word is trash. But ninja who don't take care of their comrades are worse than trash. You three, all of you, pass. The clouds broke suddenly, the killing intent vanishing. The sun shone brightly, birds singing a glorious chorus that had to be another genjutsu. Naruto felt like he wanted to puke from the sudden change. What? He managed to ask. I think this is yours, Sakura-chan, Kakashi said cheerfully, tossing the forehead protector he still held at her. She almost fumbled the catch. But she began. You said only two could pass, Sasuke growled. Ninja have to look underneath the underneath, Kakashi stated. The purpose of the test was to force you to demonstrate true teamwork. Not the easy kind, where you can all work together for mutual gain. The hard kind, where you have to sacrifice something for your comrades. He held up the two bells in one hand, and let them jingle for a moment. Whether it's a chance at personal advancement, he said, or your lives. He paused. That is the test, that no team I have taken until now has passed. Sakura swallowed. Then, she said quietly, staring at the forehead protector in her hands. I wasn't the target? Kakashi's face moved behind his mask into an obvious smile. Of course not, Sakura-chan. You, all three of you, are my cute little students. Not only two. The Jounin was silent for a moment, then added, I apologize for being so cruel. Sakura trailed off. Then she slowly tied her forehead protector around her head again. I take it back, Naruto said. You're not trash. You're just a slightly bigger bastard than Sasuke. Thanks a ton, idiot, Sasuke said dryly. Just for that, you're paying tonight. Kakashi actually let out a soft laugh. Team 7, he said formally. Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto. Congratulations. We'll meet back here at 8 tomorrow morning for our first official mission. A roaring wind kicked up a swirl of leaves, and then the Jounin was gone. This time, Hatake Kakashi entered the meeting room on the second floor of the Hokage Tower through the door. He ignored everyone's stares as he made his way over and took one of the two empty seats at the end of the table, next to the Yuhi woman. He gave the fresh Jounin an amiable nod before turning his attention on the Hokage, who sat at the other end of the table. The old man took a puff on his ever-present pipe and then let out a long, slow breath. A ring of smoke floated overhead for a moment before the air conditioning dispersed it. Kakashi-kun, he said in greeting. You're precisely on time, Saratobi-sama said, his eyes narrow as he sat next to his father. Who are you, and what did you do to Sharingan Kakashi? Kakashi gave the other man a shrug. I said I found a shortcut, he explained. Asuma snorted. Shall we begin, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked. We're still waiting on one more, the Hokage said. I think we can give her a couple minutes, at least. Don't you agree, Kakashi-kun? Kakashi just shrugged again. It was only a minute and a half later that the door flung open and a disheveled blonde kunoichi stumbled inside and almost fell into the last empty chair, next to Kakashi. "You're late, Yamanaka-kun," Kakashi complained. He almost shook under the force of the woman's killing intent. "I will end you," Yamanaka Haruka promised. "I swear it. After I kill those brats." Kakashi just winked at her. The Hokage coughed once. "Let's begin, shall we?" he asked gently. "Before I have to call in A and B guards to arrest anyone." He paused. "We'll go in reverse team number order. Asuma-kun?" The younger Sarutobi nodded once. "As ordered, I have evaluated Provisional Team 10, he stated formally. "I am pleased to inform you that they have passed my test, and I recommend that Akimichi Tsuji, Nara Shikamaru, and Yamanaka Ino be enlisted as active genin under my name of Sarutobi Asuma. No surprises there." "Very well," the Hokage said. "Haruka-kun." The blonde woman next to Kakashi groaned. "As ordered, I have evaluated Provisional Team 9, she said, "and regret to inform you that they have failed my test. I recommend that they be enlisted in the Inuzuka kennels for remedial obedience training." There were a few chuckles at that. "I'll have to see about that, Haruka-kun," the Hokage said, not quite hiding his own amusement. "But I think we can at least manage 6 months at the secondary academy." He shook his head for a moment, then prompted, "Kurenai-kun?" "As ordered," the younger woman on Kakashi's other side began, "I have evaluated Provisional Team 8. I am pleased to inform you that they have passed my test, and I recommend that Aburaim Shino, Hyuga Hinata, and Inuzuka Kiba be enlisted as active genin under my name of Yuhi Kurenai." In other circumstances, a fresh jounin passing her first provisional team might have been regarded as soft. But the Hokage had effectively handpicked that team for her, so no one said anything. If they were smart, they didn't think it either. The Hokage only nodded, clearly not surprised. "Kakashi-kun?" he asked. There was a ripple of sighs down the table. Kakashi smirked behind his mask. "As ordered, I have evaluated Provisional Team 7, he said, then paused for dramatic effect. "I am pleased to inform you that they have passed my test, and I recommend that Hareno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto be enlisted as active genin under my name of Hatake Kakashi." A few moments later, Kakashi searched the pouches of his armored jacket for a pin, then surreptitiously let it drop to the wooden floor. He was pleased to note that he could hear it perfectly. "Fuck," one of the other jounin said, "Asuma-san was right. He is an imposter." The Hokage just nodded, puffing on his pipe. "Very well," he said simply. "Daikoku-kun?" Kakashi wondered if this was what Guy felt like. After Kakashi left his team, there was a brief, awkward silence. Sakura stayed on her knees, feeling the weight of her forehead protector on her head once more. Had the jounin really meant it? He'd called her one of his cute little students, and even apologized for being cruel to her. Had this all really been some kind of mind game that he would have used any dead last student for? Was it really possible that he didn't hate her? Sakura tried to focus on that possibility, tried to ignore the hand she kept pressed to her stomach, and most of all tried to ignore the slowly fading burning sensation churning in her gut. The fire that had started building from the instant the one-eyed jounin had proclaimed the order to kill her as a missing ninja. The same rage she had felt when faced with Uzumaki Kushina. She hadn't been able to run, all her willpower focused on forcing down what she now knew had to be the nine-tailed demon fox. One thing had helped Sakura in that, she realized. As frightened as she'd been during the test, she hadn't noticed, but now she realized that almost none of Kakashi's killing intent had been directed at her. Only at the very end had she felt even a whisper of it, a trickle far less than even what Irika had put out as a demonstration early in the final year of the academy. Naruto and Sasuke he had pushed to their limits. She had been handled, in retrospect, with extreme care. Sakura wasn't sure how to feel about that, but it did mean one thing. No matter Kakashi's words, even if he truly meant them, she wasn't just one of his 3 cute little students, and she never would be. She would never be able to pretend she was just Harino Sakura. Never again. The fire in her wasn't growing anymore, and she could feel it start to die down. She could imagine the 4-pronged semicircles fading, then the spiral around her navel. She could, for a little while at least, feel mostly human. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and when she exhaled the churning power was gone. A pained moan from Naruto shook her from her thoughts. The blonde boy had flopped over on his back. "Ow ow ow," he said somehow cheerfully. "It was probably a bad idea to fight Kakashi-sensei like that when I was still hurt from those explosive tags." "Sorry," Sakura said automatically. Naruto sat up suddenly, looking at her. Sakura didn't meet his gaze. "Don't worry about it, Sakura-chan," he said. "It was my fault for not warning you about the trap." He sprang to his feet. "Only bruises, I think, and I'm a fast healer." A grunt from Sasuke drew Sakura's attention. For a moment, she thought she saw a small smirk on his face, but his expression smoothed quickly. "We're done here," he said, standing. "I'll see you for dinner." He walked off. "See you, bastard," Naruto called after him, then he turned his attention back to Sakura. "We're getting barbecue for dinner," he stated. "To celebrate. I'm paying, apparently." He paused, and when he spoke again his voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "You can if you want, come too." Sakura just stared at him for a moment, completely unsure how to handle this. There was only one time one of her classmates had ever invited her for dinner. That had been Naruto too, back in their first year at the academy, before her father had told her who had killed her mother and forbidden her from having anything to do with the Uzumaki. He had lifted the restriction on Naruto, now that they were teammates, but Naruto's face fell. "I understand," he said quietly, turning to leave himself. "Wait," Sakura said before she could stop herself. "Will your mother be there?" "No," Naruto said quickly. "Just you and me and Sasuke. I promise." I'll come," Sakura said, forcing herself to not pay attention to the worry gnawing at her. A dozen different nightmare scenarios played out in her head, but for some reason they didn't seem as important when Naruto grinned at her. "All right," he said, then he named a restaurant Sakura was familiar with, as it lay on the path between her home and the academy. She'd never eaten there before though. It was far more expensive than the places her father took her on the rare occasions they ate out. "We'll be there at 6, he told her, and then he left, saying he needed to go to the hospital. When she was finally alone, Sakura stood on shaking legs, her head spinning, trying to take in everything that had happened this morning. Naruto was not who she had built him up to be in her head, over the years of avoiding him. And Sasuke, well, he didn't seem to hate her. She didn't think Ino or Ami or any of the other girls had spent as long with the Uchiha without being called annoying. Dead last was just a fact, not a judgment, Sakura told herself. They'd both tried to save her from Kakashi. They didn't know the truth about her, but that lack of knowledge hadn't stopped the other students at the academy from hating her. Their actions still meant something, even if they were based on ignorance. She had a chance, maybe, of having not friends. That was probably too much to hope for, but at least comrades, so long as she could keep the truth about herself hidden. Not wanting to go home and lacking any other refuge, Sakura made her way to the abandoned building in the woods Mizuki had shown her. The Hokage had, after everything was done that evening, returned the key to Sakura along with the rest of her things. It was impossible to see that as anything but permission to keep using the building. She slipped inside and locked the door behind her. A shiver of fear ran through her as she glanced at the dusty window the man with the snake-like arms had pressed her against, but she forced it away. This was just an empty building. There was nothing here to hurt her. Those thoughts didn't stop one of her hands from going to her pouch to check her weapons. Weapons she wished she'd had that night, even if they weren't likely to have done much good at her skill level. She froze as her hands brushed up against an unfamiliar shape. Then she pulled out a slim, gray book from her pouch. Gutsy Shinobi Clash in the Land of Snow, she read the title aloud. It was the advanced reading copy of the new volume Kakashi had been reading. A slip of paper stuck out from between the pages, and Sakura pulled it out. "Enjoy," it read, and it was signed with a crude sketch of her teacher's masked face. Sakura giggled despite herself. When did she began to ask, but she decided the line of inquiry was futile. Kakashi was a jounin. He could have slipped it into her pouch at any time. He could probably even be watching her right now. She shivered at the idea, but both that thought and the darker ones that had driven her to the poor sanctuary left her as she sat down on the floor and started to read. She didn't look up until, halfway through the book, she realized she barely had time to run home and change before she was supposed to meet her teammates for dinner. Fortunately, Naruto was waiting for her outside the restaurant, and after a quick exchange of greetings he grabbed her hand and led her inside, barely pausing to say, "My friend already has a table," to the employee manning the door. Sakura didn't miss the familiar look of distaste the man gave her, though. It was harder to bear, now that she knew there was a good reason for it. Naruto didn't give her time to mope, bringing her to a booth near the back of the restaurant where Sasuke was sitting. The other boy nodded his head in greeting, and Naruto slipped in to sit next to him, leaving the other side of the booth to Sakura. "Hello, Sasuke-kun," Sakura said softly, not quite looking at the object of her crush. "Sakura-san," the Uchiha returned. The pink-haired girl was reasonably sure it was the first time he'd ever called her by name, and she hated herself for not being able to stop her cheeks from heating. At least the light was dim enough that he might not notice. Sakura reached for the menu set in front of her. "It'll be cheaper if we order one of the big dishes meant for sharing," Naruto commented. "Unless you didn't want to order meat?" "That's fine," Sakura said. She didn't have any objections, and even if she had it would have been rude to protest when Naruto was treating. A waiter came over to take their order a few minutes later. He favored Sakura with a hostile glare as he left, one that was far too obvious to hope the boys hadn't noticed. You know him? Sasuke asked, his voice cold. Sakura mutely shook her head. He didn't even ask what you wanted to drink, Naruto said angrily. I've half a mind. Sasuke interrupted him with an amused sound. Not now, Naruto told the other boy, still irritated sounding. I'm going to go and. Don't, Sakura made herself say. It's not important. I'll ask for some water when the food comes. If you say so, Naruto replied dubiously. The three new genin were silent for a few moments, until Naruto took it upon himself to start the conversation again. So, what do you think our mission tomorrow will be like? Glad that the topic of the waiter's reaction to her was left behind and hopeful to keep it there, Sakura replied with a textbook recitation of the definition of a D-rank mission. Somehow, this turned into the start of a much larger discussion of what being a genin might really be like, beyond what they'd learned in classes. Really, it was Naruto who did most of the talking, with only occasional interjections from Sasuke. Sakura mainly kept quiet, although Naruto kept trying to draw her back into the conversation. Predictably, it was also the blonde who first realized that it had been over half an hour, and they hadn't seen or heard from their waiter. This is ridiculous, he said, and he managed to wave over a passing waitress and explain the situation. The woman didn't seem to recognize Sakura, and she promised to find out what had happened. A few minutes later, a large, rotund man walked up to their table, followed by the waitress. He wore a leaf forehead protector around one massive arm, and his face was grim. Sakura shrank back, certain she was about to get kicked out of the restaurant. How would she explain that to Naruto and Sasuke? Sirs, ma'am, the man said politely, inclining his head at each of them in turn. I apologize for the poor service you have received. Some very foolish members of my staff managed to misplace your order. Keiko here will take your order, which will be on the house, and I will ensure it gets to you as soon as possible. You have my word that this will not happen again. Naruto nodded at him. Thank you, he said, as though this was a perfectly ordinary reaction to his complaint. Which it probably was, when you were perfectly ordinary. Again, you have my deepest apologies, the man said, and then he bowed once before leaving. Uzumaki Kushina let a small smile appear on her face, glad that the situation had been resolved without needing intervention. She'd always liked both the Kimchi hero and his restaurant, and it would have been a terrible shame to be forced to stop coming here. Naruto had been apologetic when, after getting out of the hospital, she'd offered to take him and Sasuke out for dinner to celebrate their passing Kakashi's test. He'd explained that they'd already made plans, and that he needed to promise Sakura that she wouldn't be there. Kushina had been happy enough that he and Sasuke seemed to be getting along with their teammate that she wouldn't have been offended even if Sakura didn't have every right in the world to detest her. It had only taken a little convincing, and a little rant on the horribleness of hospital food, for Naruto to accept that Kushina eating by herself in the same restaurant wouldn't be breaking his promise. Fortunately, she'd managed to get a table behind where Sakura had sat, far enough away that she wasn't concerned about the girl noticing her but close enough that she could keep an eye on the new genin team. Kushina took a bite of her predictably excellent meat, and didn't look up as someone sat at her table across from her. Hello, Kakashi-kun? Kushina-sama, Kakashi replied. I'm glad to see they let you out so quickly. She shrugged. Like I told you, it wasn't anything major. I just pushed myself too hard. It still was vexing that channeling such a tiny amount of chakra pushed her past her limits. Kushina wasn't sure whether or not she was glad that, even after 12 years, she hadn't forgotten what it had felt like to be whole. She glanced over the man's shoulder at her son's team. Haruno, Uchiha, and Uzumaki, huh? She said. It's a little nostalgic. A waiter appeared to ask Kakashi if he would be ordering anything, but the masked jounin waved the man away. I'm sure Naruto told you I passed them, he said, inclining his head back at the genin. First words out of his mouth, Kushina replied. How did it go? All I really got out him was that you're apparently the biggest bastard of a teacher in the whole world. Kushina let herself snicker, even though she knew her laugh sounded pained and ugly. The bell test made for such great first impressions. She could tell that Kakashi smiled slightly behind his mask before smoothing his expression. He's not totally wrong, Kakashi said quietly. I screwed up pretty badly. What happened? Kushina asked, blinking. Naruto hadn't gone into any real details, but he hadn't seemed overly upset. I didn't properly consider the mentality of my students, Kakashi said. Haruno-kun thought that the bell test was a ploy to get her off the team so I wouldn't have to teach her, and she decided to preempt me by quitting. Kushina stiffened. She what? I managed to salvage things somehow, Kakashi said. Naruto was a big help. You've raised a fine young man. Thank you, Kushina replied automatically. I didn't know you taught him to use your chakra chains, Kakashi said. I almost didn't have enough time to swap with a shadow replication before he caught me. Kushina smiled at that, but she noted that Kakashi seemed tense about something. Is there something else? She prompted. She took a drink of water. Kakashi was hesitant, but he did answer. You probably already know, Kushina-sama, he said, but Naruto and Sakura both seem to believe that you killed Hironoamaya. Kushina looked down at her half-empty plate. I know, she said. She hoped that the usual hoarseness of her voice hid her distress. This was not a conversation she wanted to have with Kakashi, but it was probably unavoidable, ever since she told Naruto that Sakura was telling the truth. She wouldn't take those words back, though. It isn't my place to pry, Kakashi said, but the Nine Tails killed Amaya-san. That had been the cover story, more than believable enough. Enough others had died that way, also her fault. Kushina didn't look up from her meal, but for a moment all she saw was the image of her friend as she'd seen her last, mere hours before everything went to hell. You're right, Kushina said, more harshly than she intended. It isn't your place to pry. I'm sorry, Kakashi said. Kushina tried to sigh, but it turned into a cough. I'm sorry too, she said. I didn't mean it like that. She paused, searching for the right words and not finding them. I can't explain, she finally said weakly. She knew that wouldn't satisfy Kakashi, but there were too many secrets, and not all of them were hers to tell even if she wanted to. I see, was all Kakashi said. I won't ask any further then. Kushina forced herself to smile. Thank you? I have to ask though, Kakashi said. Is whatever it is that lies between you and Hirono Takuru-san something I need to worry about hurting their teamwork? Not on my end, was all Kushina could say to that. There was an awkward silence for a while, and Kushina distracted herself by returning to her meal. I know Sasuke-kun, she finally said when it became clear that it was up to her to keep the conversation going or Kakashi would leave. How is Sakura-chan like? Do you still think she's a danger to everyone around her? Kushina regretted the last words as she spoke them, and could only hope Kakashi didn't note her bitterness. He'd had no intention of offending her. Kakashi didn't answer for several moments. She's smart, he said, but her combat skills are bad enough that there's no question that her bottom ranking in the class was a fair assessment. She's quiet, introverted. Severely lacking in self-esteem, beyond what her poor skills merit. I see, Kushina said. Was that what she would have become, if everyone had known the truth about her? I'm not sure how much of her problem is just her, and how much is what she recently learned. Kakashi's discomfort was obvious. You heard Takura-san say that she wasn't taking it well. I think that's understating the matter. Kushina swallowed. What do you mean? Kakashi's eye darted about, reminding her that what they were discussing was still a secret to at least the younger generation, in theory. I don't think she really understands that the container is not what it contains, not deep down. Kushina's heart sank. I see. I wish I knew how to fix that, Kakashi said. She's already been told, but it clearly didn't sink in. He paused. I can't help but think Minato-sensei would know what to do. He waited for Kushina to respond, but there was nothing she could say to that. There was nothing she could do, not without breaking her promise to Takura more than she already had, and no reason to think that the girl would want to hear or believe anything she had to say. Kakashi shook his head. All I can try to do is to try and build a rapport and treat her like a human being, but for all her obedience, I don't think she really trusts anyone not to hurt her except her father, and maybe one of her academy teachers. She has good enough reason to feel that way, Kushina said, and it was safe enough to let her anger into her voice. She was almost glad that Minato hadn't had to see how the village treated the girl he'd wished to be seen as a hero. How the village would have treated Kushina herself, if it knew. As for your second question, Kakashi said, she hasn't shown any instability yet, but she hasn't been pushed either. It isn't her fault, but I'm still concerned. It hurt, that Kakashi, the boy she'd almost seen as a son, could switch so smoothly from saying that he had to treat the girl like a human being to assessing her like an active explosive tag. Kushina couldn't deny him the right to be concerned, though. Nor could she let him worry in ignorance, not when the girl could pay the ultimate price. A certain amount of leakage, she said, almost without thinking, is to be expected, as she enters life and death situations for the first time and learns control. If anything, it's beneficial. Kakashi sat up in his seat, a question clearly in his mind, but Kushina answered before he could ask. I did help to design that seal, she reminded him. That wasn't the source of her knowledge, but it was a good enough excuse. Ah, Kakashi said, and thankfully Kushina could read acceptance in his body. He waited for her to continue. Kushina instead reached into the bag strapped to the side of her wheelchair and pulled out a small paper tag, which she slid across the table to him. Kakashi picked it up and studied it. Kushina knew well what he was looking at: a pair of reverse 4-image seals surrounding a counterclockwise spiral. Further arcane characters would expand on use into a temporary threefold crescent barrier seal. If things get out of hand, Kushina said, you can apply that physically. Ideally over the navel, but anywhere should work. It will interrupt the flow of chakra and suppress any manifestations. It'll knock her for a loop, though, so don't accept her to be able to fight afterward. I've only had time to make the one, but I doubt you'll need any until she sees real combat. It was a good thing Naruto had vast chakra reserves for his age, or she would never be able to get enough compatible chakra ink to do any seal work. As it was, she was limited to what she could justify stealing from what he made for practice. I should have a couple more done before you take on any C ranks. Kakashi put the seal tag away. Thank you, he said. Do you have any insight into how I can tell when it's getting dangerous? Given what you've told me of her personality, Kushina said, it should be fairly obvious if she's losing control. She shrugged, and tried to make her next sentence sound like a joke instead of the warning it was. Beyond that, if she starts growing tails, that's probably a bad sign. If Kakashi smiled, it was hidden by his mask. Sakura stifled a yawn as she unlocked the back door of her house and slipped inside. After everything that had happened today, she wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed. Between that and the large meal she'd just eaten, Sakura was tired enough that she doubted she would have nightmares tonight. That would be a welcome respite from the past few nights. I'm home, Sakura said, and she heard movement from the front of the house. That wasn't surprising, as she'd seen lights on inside the house from the street, so her father had to be home. What was surprising was when she heard another man's murmured voice, answered a moment later by her father's. They had a guest over? Curiosity warred with tiredness and shyness for a moment, and then Sakura made her way through the small kitchen to the front sitting room of the house. Welcome home, her father said in greeting, sitting in his favorite, battered old armchair. He'd once said it had been the first piece of furniture her mother and he had purchased together. Seated on the couch, across from him, was an unfamiliar young, silver-haired man, sipping at a cup of tea. He set it down on the side table and stood, one hand adjusting his glasses. This must be Sakura-chan, he said gently. Who was this man? Sakura glanced at her father nervously, but he gave her a smile. Sakura-chan, this is Yakushi Kabuto-san, a medic from the hospital. We've been discussing the possibility of taking the Chunin exams together in a few months. Kabuto bowed slightly. A pleasure to meet you, he said, and he actually sounded like he was telling the truth. I've already heard rumors that Hataki-sama passed his first genin team ever. Congratulations. Thank you, Sakura said automatically. Was it the bell test? Kabuto asked, his voice curious. Hataki-sama used that trick to fail my second provisional team. He chuckled. Not that we idiots deserve to pass, he continued as he sat back down. It was, Sakura confirmed. Kabuto shook his head. I'll have to tell everyone that it wasn't that Hataki-sama's gotten softer then, he said. If you're not too tired and Takura-san doesn't mind the diversion, I'd be interested in hearing how your team passed. I don't think anyone's passed that test since before you or I were born. The pink-haired girl's eyes widened. Kakashi had mentioned that every team he'd taken on had failed the test, but Sakura hadn't imagined that. Had he been intending to fail them all from the start? Because of her? He'd seemed pleased when they passed, though maybe she was just overthinking it. If you want to, Sakura-chan, he father said, but Sakura could tell that he was curious too. She wasn't sure about talking about it in front of this Kabuto, but he seemed nice enough. She'd just have to be careful about what she said, to avoid letting her secret slip. Kabuto was seated in the center of the couch, but he moved over to one side as Sakura came over, letting her take the opposite side and keep some distance between them. Both men looked at her, and not comfortable with being the center of attention, it took Sakura a few minutes to start. She knew she wasn't a good storyteller, and she still had nightmares about the handful of times she'd had to do an oral presentation in the academy, but she ultimately managed to stammer out something approximating the events of this morning. Her father's face had turned thunderous when she'd reached Kakashi's order to kill her, but it had smoothed as she continued, and now he had a thoughtful look about him. Kabuto let out a whistle, and when Sakura turned to look at him his eyes were wide behind his glasses. Not softer at all, he said. Quite the opposite. Hataki-sama certainly never threatened us with death. He reached down to his dark purple pants and pulled a small scroll out from somewhere. It's traditional to give presents when someone you know is promoted, Kabuto commented. It's probably overly familiar of me, but passing that test deserves some recognition. He tossed the scroll at Sakura. Unroll it, he instructed as she caught it. Sakura obeyed, finding on the scroll a dozen small circles with characters written inside of them. It was a sealing scroll. Each circle was labeled. The scroll contained bandages, antibiotics, painkillers, 2 different strengths of soldier pill. It was a very extensive first aid kit. They're bloodless seals, Kabuto explained, so you just have to channel a little chakra into them to release the contents, and a little more to put them back in. I'm sure you remember the basics from the academy. He shrugged. Sticking something new in there is more complicated, but you can ask for me at the hospital when you need refills. Sakura had never really studied sealing techniques, not after her first days at the academy, but this much seal work had to be expensive, even ignoring the contents. This is too much, she said, re-rolling the scroll and holding it out to the young man. He shook his head. Sealing is an important part of advanced medical techniques, Kabuto said. My father's been training me, and I've been making these for practice for the past couple years. He paused, then added, actually, whenever you're at the hospital, feel free to ask for me or him. He's the only Yakushi-sensei there. We'll make sure you get what you need. The silver-haired man said the words innocently, but Sakura couldn't help but wonder whether they had another meaning. Was it possible this Kabuto knew what she was and didn't care? This isn't necessary, Sakura's father began. Kabuto flashed him a grin. Nonsense, Takura-san, he said. We pretty much agreed to be teammates, hadn't we? That means that anyone who is important to you is important to me. He smiled, glancing at Sakura. How does Hataki-sama put it again? He asked. Ninja who don't watch out for their allies. Ninja who don't take care of their comrades are worse than trash, Sakura answered, and then she yawned uncontrollably. Kabuto laughed. I think I should head on out, so your daughter can get to sleep, Takura-san, he said. It's getting late. Sakura's father nodded and stood. I'll speak with Sabaki-chan tomorrow and ask if she's interested in being our third. I think she will be. She asked me if I wanted to take the exam with her the last time it was held here. I'll look forward to meeting her then, Kabuto said as he rose. Good night, Sakura-chan. I'm glad I had the chance to meet you. Kakashi arrived to Team 7's morning meeting a few minutes less than an hour after it was scheduled. On one of the pages of the pink notebook Sakura kept her personal notes in. She'd been tracking the times of her teacher's arrival for the past week, wondering if she could discern a pattern. Her hypothesis for today had been that the one-eyed man would be 72 minutes late. Clearly, her theory required adjustment. Sakura was seated with her back against a tree, having been watching Naruto and Sasuke lightly spar, and after a month she was used enough to the routine that she didn't wait for a gesture from Kakashi to stand up and join her teammates in front of him. After Naruto's customary outrage at Kakashi's tardiness, the man pulled a scroll out from one of the pouches on his armored vest, gently tossing it a few inches in the air. I wasn't planning on doing a mission today, but Hokage-sama had this one delivered, he announced as he caught the scroll. So let's get it out of the way first thing so we can get to training. Besides Sakura, Naruto grinned widely. So what is it? He asked. Dog walking? Kakashi said nothing. Weeding? Or are we lucky enough to? He trailed off as the cloth of Kakashi's mask wrinkled into a clear smile. Yes. Naruto exclaimed. It seems, Kakashi began, his mask smoothing, that the pet cat of our esteemed guest, Shijimi Dano, has managed to run away. Again. Sasuke grunted like he'd been punched, while Naruto began to dance. Sakura wasn't able to stop herself from giggling, though she quieted quickly, hopefully before Sasuke noticed. And Shijimi Dano has requested our services specifically. Again. You three know what to do. Meet me back here in an hour. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's hand. Come on, bastard! Let's go fetch Tori-chan. This is the best D rank ever. For you maybe, Sasuke grumbled, but he didn't resist as Naruto pulled him away. Sakura accepted the mission scroll from Kakashi, then trailed after the pair of boys as they left the training ground. She glanced backward at their teacher, and she thought she noticed a hint of a smirk behind Kakashi's cloth mask before he vanished in a swirl of wind-borne leaves. Sakura smiled herself, then sped up slightly to avoid falling too far behind her teammates, and losing them in the rush of morning traffic. She caught up with them before they turned onto one of the village's main streets, one of the few that traveled in a straight line for more than a few hundred yards, leading straight from the main gates to the grand arena where the Chunin exams were held every few years. Check the scroll, dead last, Sasuke ordered as she drew near. Maybe that old woman finally decided to go for assassination mission instead. I kind of doubt that, bastard, Naruto replied, and I've told you 100 times to stop calling Sakura-chan that. Sasuke just grunted, and Sakura was glad he was respectful enough of her feelings to not say the accurate response she'd overheard a few times when the boys had the same discussion in private. It's true, isn't it? Naruto still seemed to catch the sentiment at least as well as Sakura did, a brief flash of anger passing over his face before he turned to the pink-haired girl. "I'll hold this bastard still," he offered, "so you can hit him like he deserves." Sakura flushed, and Sasuke just rolled his dark eyes and sped up until he was walking a few yards ahead of them. That's not necessary, Naruto-san," Sakura said, struggling to keep her embarrassment from showing further. Hitting Sasuke? Just because he'd called her something mild like dead last? Even if he wasn't, well, Sasuke, that was hardly appropriate. Although the thought of doing that to Ino or Ami in some fantasy world where the inevitable brutal retaliation didn't exist. "You don't have to be so formal, you know, Sakura-chan," Naruto said as they turned off the main thoroughfare, shaking Sakura from her musings. "We're teammates, after all." Sakura swallowed at that. It was true, she supposed, and she knew it was stupid to hold what his mother had done against Naruto when they had to be teammates. He'd been nice to her over the past month. He'd been more than nice, really. It was just she didn't know if she could handle calling the son of the woman who'd killed her mother Naruto-kun, even if he probably deserved it. Sakura began, but she wasn't sure what she intended to say. It would be horribly rude, she thought, to insist on the more formal address. Not for the first time, Naruto seemed to be able to read her feelings better than Sakura herself. "I understand," he said. A dark look fell over his face, but it wasn't directed at her. "Don't worry about it, Sakura-chan. Forget I said anything." Sasuke stopped outside a small, wooded park, within sight of the walled mansion the fire daimyo used when he visited the Leaf Village. He turned to face Naruto and Sakura as he waited for them to catch up. "What's with that look?" he asked Naruto. "Nothing," Naruto said with a wave of his hand, a cheery smile appearing on his face. "Let's do this thing," he exclaimed. "I really should check the scroll first," Sakura said. "In case there are any changes from last time." "Do it then," Sasuke said with a grunt. Sakura opened the scroll and scanned it quickly. "It looks like normal," she said. "All right then," Naruto said. "Sakura-chan and I will go wait over at those benches like normal, then, while you do your broody thing." There was utter silence for a moment. "My broody thing?" Sasuke finally rumbled. "You know," Naruto said. "That thing you do, that drives all the girls and apparently girl cats wild." He looked at Sakura. "Can you explain how that works? Because I sure can't." If Sakura's face had been red earlier, it surely had to be incandescent now. "I couldn't say," she managed to squeak out. Not that Naruto was wrong, but to try and explain it? While Sasuke himself was listening? "Thank the sage for small mercies," Sasuke said, and then he sighed. "Go. Let's get this over with." "Have fun brooding," Naruto said, and then he took Sakura's arm and pulled her away. She let him, knowing from painful experience that Tora would go wild if she got too close. Which probably just made the cat more perceptive than Naruto or Sasuke, but Sakura didn't want to dwell on that. Naruto plopped down on one of the benches he'd indicated earlier, along the roadside, and Sakura sat down next to him, keeping an eye on Sasuke as he went a little ways further into the park. She had to admit, this was possibly the most pleasant D-rank of them all. "What I said earlier," the blonde boy said suddenly while they watched Sasuke lean against a tree. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you like that." Sakura shifted uncomfortably. Couldn't he just let matters lie? Don't worry about it, Naruto-san," she told him. I know it can't be made up, what my mom did." Naruto looked away. "But I just want," he trailed off, for once seeming as unable to find words as he often left Sakura. "I understand," Sakura said after a moment. Naruto looked at Sakura again for a few seconds, before dropping his gaze to the ground. "What would you prefer if I didn't call you Sakura-chan?" he asked quietly. A month ago, Sakura would have said yes in an instant, certain that the address was mocking. Now, though, she could give Naruto that much, even if the familiarity did make her a little uncomfortable. "No," she said, "it's fine." Naruto gave her a smile, and then their attention was distracted by a loud meow. Both of them looked up to watch as a large brown cat emerged from cover of the trees and approached Sasuke. The dark-haired boy pointedly ignored the animal, which let out another, slightly plaintive-sounding meow. "Shut up, cat," Sasuke growled out, loudly enough that his teammates could hear from their position. Naruto's smile widened into a grin, and Sakura knew a faint smile was appearing on her own face as she stared raptly at their other teammate and their mission objective. "I wish I had a camera," Naruto whispered as the cat took action, rubbing itself vigorously against Sasuke's legs. Sakura couldn't stop her giggle. She agreed, though she suspected for different reasons. Sasuke was just too cute for words, and the scene deserved to be immortalized and stored in a scrapbook. Or two. Or three. Besides, she suspected that with a middleman to disguise the source, she could probably make more money selling prints to the other girls than from these D-ranks. Sasuke finally gave in and squatted down, giving Tora a perfunctory pet. This elicited a loud, satisfied purr, and after a few more pets the cat deigned to allow the boy to pick her up. Keeping the cat securely cradled in his arms, the animal had decided to escape again once he walked over to where his teammates were waiting, the most adorable disgruntled expression on his face. "Come on," he snapped. While Sakura barely managed to keep her face smooth as she stood, Naruto didn't even try, laughing openly as he reached over and scratched Tora behind the ears. "Are you really sure the Uchiha aren't the evil opposites of the Inuzuka, Sasuke?" he asked. "Shut up, Naruto," he growled, and then he stalked out of the park, Tora giving Sakura a warning hiss as they passed her. Naruto gave her another grin, and then they followed Sasuke the short distance to the Fire Daimyo's mansion. It took about a half hour to deliver the cat to her owner, report the mission success, and make their way back to the third training ground. This got them there more or less on time for Kakashi's scheduled meeting, or more realistically at least an hour early. Sasuke and Naruto settled into some more sparring, and while she demurred at first, Naruto eventually managed to draw Sakura into the practice as well. He was correcting Sakura on a taijutsu stance when Kakashi finally arrived, a book in one hand. It took Sakura only a glance at the cover to recognize it as the Gutsy Shinobi and the Ghosts of Bird Country. Kakashi pointed with the volume at a stand of trees. "Today," he said without any introduction, "you're going to learn how to climb trees like a ninja." For as long as Sakura could remember, the small training room in the back of her house had stayed unused, and she usually only entered it on the rare occasions that her father had decided it was time to clean it. It wasn't hard for her to guess why he was disinclined to use it. A personal dojo was the kind of addition to the house that was more likely to be demanded by a jounin than a genin, and there was a set of wooden bakken racked neatly by the door even though her father didn't usually carry a sword. It had been her mother's room, she knew without her father saying. Yet, in the past month, since Sakura had become a genin and her father had started talking about participating in the upcoming chunin exams, that had changed. Her mother's things had been packed away and relocated to the attic, the old and worn floor pads had been replaced, and a visit to the training room had become part of her father's morning routine, one that he dragged Sakura into when he could. This morning, they were working on kunai melee. They didn't spar freely, the way Naruto and Sasuke liked to spar, a desire for which Kakashi usually indulged them. Sakura and her father might both be genin, but she was a 12-year-old girl fresh out of the academy, and Hirono Takuru was a man with decades of experience. Overpowering his daughter, if he wished, would be a matter of moments. "Are you sure you'll be okay while I'm gone?" her father asked Sakura, for what seemed like the 100th time, as she struggled to block each of the strikes he made with his blunt practice blade. Today, she wasn't counterattacking or dodging. Only blocks with her own weapon were allowed. "Yes, father," Sakura answered. It was far from the first time he'd asked the question, and she felt a spark of irritation which she pushed aside with practiced ease. The next blow would be from above, she thought. Her father struck low, almost crouching down to slash at Sakura's feet, and she had to dance backward to avoid the strike. He frowned. "You can't let yourself expect a pattern, Sakura," he said seriously. "Yes, father," Sakura said again. Only fear that inattention would prove dangerous kept her eyes from dropping to the floor in embarrassment. "That's enough for now," her father said. "Isn't it time for you to go to your team meeting anyway?" "We're meeting a little later than usual today," Sakura reminded him as she started quickly clean up and put the practice weapons away. "At the tower. Once Tsubaki-chan gets here, we'll be going to meet Kabuto-kun and our squad leader for this mission there too. You can walk with us." Her father put his own weapon away. "Since we have some extra time, I think I'll make some hot chocolate. Would you like some?" Sakura nodded eagerly, and her father vanished into the kitchen. Sakura finished her task before following. Her father was already at work, milk heating on the stovetop as he mixed the dry ingredients in a small bowl. He cooked for himself and Sakura more out of necessity than pleasure, but his homemade hot chocolate was one of the few recipes he prided himself on. He told Sakura once that he'd learned it from his mother, who had picked it up on campaign in the southern islands during the Second Ninja World War. Sakura quickly washed her hands and face and went to sit down at the kitchen table. A few moments later, her father joined her, 2 steaming mugs in hand. Sakura accepted hers and took a drink, only to wince from the too hot liquid. She blew on it to cool it, then took a more cautious sip. Her father chuckled. "Your mother always did the same thing," he said softly, even after years and years. Sakura stared at the top of her hot chocolate. It was not the first time her father had said that. Her father shook his head. "You really are so much like her," he commented wistfully. Sakura's gaze didn't move. "I don't see how," she whispered. "Mom was a jounin, a hero. I'm not." Her father was silent a moment. "I didn't fall in love with 5 Element Maya," he stated quietly. I fell in love with Yuhiyamaya, dead last in our academy class. Sakura almost dropped her mug as she looked up, staring at her father in shock. Mother, was that can't be true. Her father took a long drink from his hot chocolate. It is. He hesitated, seeming to ponder his words for a long time. Sakura-chan, your academy ranking only matters in the academy. I placed third in our class, 5 places ahead of Namikaze's Minato. As always, her father's face turned cold and hard for a moment when he named the famous hero. Sakura no longer needed to wonder why. Not now that she knew what legacy the 4th Hokage had left. Now that she knew what he had done to an innocent baby girl, what he had cost her father, in order to save the village, in order to create her. Her father didn't miss the look that passed over her face. What's wrong, Sakura-chan? Sakura looked down at her cooling cocoa again. I wish I was better. I wish, she trailed off, not sure she what wanted to say. Her father reached over the table and took her hand. Sakura-chan, he said gently. Do you think mother would be proud of me? Sakura asked. Would she love her daughter, despite everything she was? No doubt, her father answered without hesitating. Every day, he said, I wish your mother was here to see you. A loud knock came from their front door, and her father smiled. That would be Tsubaki-chan, he said. I'll get the door while you finish your cocoa. When she had done that, cleaned up, and went to the front room of their house, her father was talking quietly with a tall, black-haired woman who Sakura only half recognized. At the sound of Sakura's approach, her father turned back to her. Ah, Sakura-chan, you remember Cadet Tsubaki-san, of course. Sakura almost froze at the full name, then forced herself to give a polite bow. Hello, Kata-san? The woman looked at Sakura, and something flashed in her dark eyes that made Sakura want to back away. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone, and the woman smiled faintly. Good morning, Sakura-chan. Sakura wanted to kick herself. How had she not realized? Of course, the Tsubaki-chan who her father was taking the Chunin exams with would be the same Tsubaki who was her teacher, and his friend, Mizuki's wife. She almost stammered out an apology, but she wasn't sure what she could actually apologize to the woman for, not without bringing up her secret or sharing things about that night the Hokage had warned her not to speak of. The woman seemed to read Sakura's mind well enough, despite her silence. Don't blame yourself, Sakura-chan, she said. Mizuki wouldn't want that. Thank you, Sakura's father said. The corner of Tsubaki's mouth twitched into an almost smile that seemed far more genuine than the actual smile she had directed at Sakura a moment ago. I didn't say it for you, Takaru. Of course, her father replied. Sakura didn't know what to say, but neither adult pressed her for an answer, and they let her hang back a small ways as she trailed them out of the house. She wasn't far enough away to avoid overhearing their quiet conversation, though. Have you heard anything more? Her father asked. Tsubaki shrugged. No more, she said, her voice tight and controlled. Just a letter once a week, but no real news in those. At least they are allowing him communication. Her father hesitated, then added, it's a good sign. I don't know how much of my letters get back to him, Tsubaki replied, anger breaking through a little. Or really the letters are in his handwriting, reference things only we would know, but ANBU. Sakura's stomach dropped suddenly. She meant Mizuki might be dead. Her teacher might be dead, secretly executed because he had let himself be captured for her sake. She knew intellectually the Hokage himself had made a point of telling her that night that Mizuki had made his own choices, that if he'd done the right thing in the first place, as he taught them in the academy, he would have been in no danger. It still felt like it was her fault. There's no reason for a fragile deception like that, her father said firmly. You know that, Tsubaki-chan. Right, the woman said, taking a deep breath and visibly calming. You're right. A few moments later, Yakushi Kabuto joined them, appearing out from a side street with a cheery wave. Good morning, Takara-san, Tsubaki-san. He smiled down at Sakura. Sakura-chan. Kabuto-kun, her father replied. Good morning, Kabuto-san, Sakura said a moment later. Tsubaki just nodded at her younger teammate. Are we gaining a fourth teammate? The silver-haired boy asked lightly. It's a little early for Sakura-chan to take the exams, don't you think? Sakura's father replied. But if you fail a few more times, maybe you'll get to team with her soon enough. Kabuto placed a hand over his heart in mock pain. You realize that I am the youngest person on this team. This is only Takara-kun's second try, Tsubaki said dryly, and my third. How many did you say you were up to? Kabuto raised a hand to adjust his glasses, but Sakura saw him grinning behind it. True enough, he said. He turned to Sakura. So why do we have the pleasure of your company this morning, Sakura-chan? I'm meeting my team at the tower this morning, Sakura explained. Ah. And how are you getting along with them? The boys giving you any trouble? Kabuto asked. No, no trouble, Kabuto-san, Sakura said. Kabuto smiled again. I'm glad to hear that. What's Hataki-sama been teaching you? Tree walking, Sakura said, not able to stop herself from grimacing. Naruto had taken to it like a natural, reaching the top of his tree by the end of the first session, and the next morning a slightly tired Sasuke had matched his feat. Sakura, of course, hadn't found it so easy, taking a few more days to get to the top, and even now a distraction easily made her lose her footing. Worse, now Kakashi had them using the technique for endurance training, running up and down the tree trunks until they literally dropped. That bad, huh? Kabuto asked, and Sakura knew her thoughts must have shown on her face. If you're still having trouble when we get back, I can give you some chakra control tips. Thank you, Kabuto-san, Sakura said, and then they turned a corner and the Hokage tower came into view. Like always this time of day, it was busy with ninja coming and going. Her father led his team through the throng toward a bench outside the entrance, and not seeing her team, Sakura kept trailing after. Waiting there was a brown-haired woman wearing a Chunin's armored jacket, and Sakura didn't need the tattoos on her face to know she was an Inuzuka. 3 gray dogs lounged around her feet, and as their mistress stood they also stirred. Haruno Takaru, Cadet Tsubaki, and Yakushi Kabuto? She asked. Yes, sir, Tsubaki answered quickly. The woman nodded, and her dogs left her, walking up to sniff the genin. One of them approached Sakura, and she backed away nervously. Your daughter? The Inuzuka asked her father. Yes, the man said, his voice tight. Sakura's eyes didn't leave the dog, which made a soft noise she couldn't interpret. Is there a problem, sir? She heard her father ask. The dog suddenly leapt forward. Sakura raised her arms to guard herself, only to find them covered in wet slobber. She almost fell over from surprise, and then she did fall over as the dog overpowered her and started to lick her face. The Inuzuka woman laughed. I suppose not, she said. Heel boy. Don't scare the poor girl. The dog backed away, and the woman smiled at Sakura as she rose. Sorry, she said. He likes meeting kids. Try scratching beneath his chin, and you'll have a friend for life. Don't worry, he won't bite a leaf ninja. Sakura cautiously followed the suggestion, and quickly the other 2 dogs crowded around her, demanding attention. While she was distracted by the animals, the Inuzuka turned back to her father's team. I've been assigned to be your squad leader for this mission, she said. My name is Inuzuka Hana, right? Kabuto asked. The woman took a moment to answer. Do I know? Wait. She snapped her fingers suddenly. That's where I knew that name from. Yakushi Kabuto, Migaki-sensei's applied toxicology lectures, 2 years ago. You sat next to Hyuga. Kabuto bowed. Guilty as charged. All right then. Like he said, I'm Inuzuka Hana. My partners are the Himura brothers. Don't even bother trying to keep them separate in your head. They'll just get offended when you mess up which is which. One of the dogs let out a huff that Sakura interpreted as amused. We're scheduled to meet with the client in an half-hour. Is there a reason we're being assigned a Chunin squad leader? Sakura's father asked. That's not normal for veteran genin on a low-risk C rank like we asked for. Good question, Haruno, Hana said. We're being hired to guard an almost completed construction project, but the client claims there's no specific threat and he wants extra security just in case. Based on that and other intelligence, we're expecting opposition. Worst-case scenario is estimated at 1 or 2 missing ninja, low Chunin quality at maximum. Why not just turn down the mission if the client is lying to us? Tsubaki asked. Hana just shrugged. That's Hokage-sama's call. Politics, probably. She paused. Unless you've got any urgent questions, we should head on up so we can go over the mission with Hokage-sama before the client arrives. One of the Himura brothers gave Sakura a parting lick, and then the dogs retreated to their mistress's side. After saying goodbye to Sakura, her father's team vanished into the Hokage tower, leaving Sakura to wait for her own team to arrive. Kiba's sister's dogs are nice, aren't they? Sakura jumped in surprise, whirling around. And Naruto-san! She exclaimed. When did you? Naruto gestured vaguely. I was waiting over there for you to be done with your dad's team. Oh, Sakura said. She was Kiba's sister? She asked. Yeah, Naruto said. Sakura shook her head as she sat down on the bench Hana had vacated. It was hard to imagine the woman she just met being so closely related to the rambunctious boy from their class. Naruto seated himself next to her, and they waited in silence for a few minutes. "Hey, Sakura-chan," Naruto said suddenly. "Has your father ever said anything about mine?" Sakura blinked. "What? Why are you asking?" "My mom won't talk about him," Naruto said. "Except that they weren't married, and he was a leaf ninja. I know she had to have known your parents back then, so I just wondered." Naruto's words brought back a familiar pain and anger, and it must have showed on Sakura's face. "Sorry. I shouldn't have brought that up." Naruto grimaced. "She still won't talk about that either." Sakura's gut churned. "I wish you wouldn't either," Sakura snapped without thinking. Naruto froze for a moment. "I'm sorry." Sakura realized what she had said. She wished she could say that she felt some of the Nine Tails' unnatural rage, but all she felt was her own emotions. The stupid thing she just said was all her. It was true, she wished Naruto would just let the matter of what had happened between their mothers be and stop reminding her of whose son he was. It was still stupid and hurtful to say it in that way, to his face. It probably sounded like she hated him. "Naruto-san, No." Naruto held up his hand. "Don't apologize to me. I was wrong to talk about what my mother did that way. It won't happen again." Despite his calm words, his face was stormy. "Again, I'm sorry." He stood and stalked off, and Sakura stared after him helplessly. Then she buried her face in her hands. Had she just wrecked what was possibly the closest thing she'd ever have to a friendship with one of her peers? The only thing stopping her from giving freedom to the tears that wanted to flow was the eyes of the ninja going in and out of the Hokage tower. She wasn't sure how long she sat there before hearing Sasuke's voice. "Get up, dead last." Kakashi-sensei's finally showed up. She looked up at the dark-haired boy, then scanned the plaza as she rose, finding Kakashi and Naruto by the entrance to the tower. "Sorry." Sasuke just grunted, and she followed him over to the rest of the team. Kakashi's eye wandered over Sakura, but he didn't say anything other than, "A bit of an exciting mission today, I think. Let's head on up to meet with Hokage-sama." They wound up waiting for a few minutes outside the briefing room, as the previous meeting had gone over. When the doors opened, it was her father's team who emerged, escorting an unfamiliar, old civilian man. When her father spotted her, he paused for a moment. At a nod from Inuzuka Hana, he quickly walked over to Sakura and her team. "Harino-san," Kakashi said in greeting. "Leaving on a mission?" "Yes, sir," he said, and then he turned to Sakura. His eyes widened, and Sakura knew that he recognized that something had disturbed her. "It looks like this mission could turn out a little bit longer than we planned, Sakura-chan, so try not to worry too much if I'm not back in 3 weeks exactly." "I'll be fine, father. Have a safe mission." "Right," he said. "You be safe too." He glanced at her teammates, and his face hardened as his gaze settled on Naruto. The blonde boy winced, but then he straightened, an equally firm look on his face. "She'll be safe," Naruto said seriously. "I promise." Sakura swallowed, her face flushing in embarrassment. What was he doing? Her father seemed taken aback, and he just grunted before exchanging goodbyes with Sakura and returning to his waiting team. As they left, the civilian asked, "Your daughter?" "Yes, Tazuna-san," her father answered. "Cute kid," the old man said, and that was the last Sakura heard of the conversation. At a signal from one of the Hokage's Chunin guards, Kakashi led them into the briefing room. As normal, the Hokage was seated at a long desk, although somewhat less typically Iruka was seated next to him instead of the other of his usual assistants. "And a good morning to Team Kakashi," the Hokage said, puffing contentedly on his pipe as he studied a sheet of paper. "Good morning, Hokage-sama," Sakura said in unison with teammates, forcing herself to push aside her still troubled emotions. This wasn't the time or the place to deal with the problem between Naruto and her. Kakashi just raised his hand in a way that was almost vaguely reminiscent of a lazy salute. "Morning, Hokage-sama. Is the mission we talked about ready?" "Yes. Iruka-sensei?" The teacher reached under the desk and pulled out a metal box. It was held shut by what looked like a padlock with a paper seal taped over it. "This is to be delivered to the guard outpost in Otafukagai. It should go without saying that you aren't to look inside," Iruka stated. "You will receive a similar package there, which you will return here." After a brief look among the 3 genin, Naruto stepped forward and accepted the package, which turned out to have straps bolted on to the bottom, allowing it to be worn like a backpack. "Understood," he said. They waited for a moment. Kakashi had pulled out his current Gutsy Shinobi book again. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "You aren't coming with us, Kakashi-sensei?" Sakura asked. It was normal for them to do D ranks on their own, but one going outside the village walls, even if only as far as the neighboring town of Otafukagai. Kakashi turned a page in his book. I promised my widowed neighbor that I would water her plants today. None of the genin even bothered protesting the excuse. The Hokage chuckled, and Kakashi flipped to the next page. Oh, I almost forgot the exciting part. Then he turned another page. The genin waited, but he didn't say anything, apparently lost in his reading. What exciting part? Sasuke asked after their teacher reached the next page. If you can make it there and back here without touching the ground, Kakashi said, I think you'll be ready for a C-rank mission. Sakura could feel her teammate's sudden interest, although she was far less excited. Alright, wait, Naruto said. If you're going to be watering widowed plants, how will you even know if we? Kakashi let out a thoughtful sound, and Naruto cut off. Jounin, right? Sasuke made for the windows behind the Hokage and Irika. Come on. Let's get this over with. The Hokage reached behind himself, unlocking the window. With a nod of thanks, Sasuke opened it and jumped outside and onto the roof a short distance below. Naruto grinned. All right. This should be fun, he said before heading out himself. Sakura took a moment to steel herself before following her teammates out onto the roof. Naruto's day had not started well. He'd had to drop his mother off at the hospital for a checkup before meeting his team at the tower. It had been more awkward than usual, as he'd been working up the courage to broach the subject of his father, which he'd only done a handful of times since he first realized that it was a little weird that his mother rarely spoke of him, and never in detail. Then, when he'd gone to meet his team, Sakura had been with her father, who he really had no idea how to interact with, now that he knew the truth. What did you even say in that situation? None of the etiquette lessons he'd half-learned secondhand via Hinata had anything to say on the subject. Somehow he didn't think, sorry my mother killed your wife, would really make much of an impact. So fathers had been on his mind when he joined up with Sakura, and he turned into a big idiot. Sure, their parents must have known each other back then. That was a smooth bit of conversation. What kind of idiot was he? It was a minor miracle even with the girl's obvious starvation for friendship that Sakura was willing to accept his overtures at all. If she shut him down now it would fall on Sasuke to try to bind this team together, and he wouldn't even call Sakura by name unless Naruto had threatened him enough in prior hour. Even the excitement of getting a D-rank mission that bordered on a C-rank by mere virtue of going outside the village proper, with the promise of actual C-ranks to come, couldn't totally lift his spirits. At least the mission itself and their teacher's challenge were going well. Getting to the village walls without touching the ground had been trivial. The only moderate difficulty had been explaining what they were doing to the one adult ninja who had come up to interrogate them about why they were jumping from roof to roof instead of using the streets. Crossing the open space before the gates had required waiting for a passing merchant's cart, and getting through the gates on it had required another quick explanation to the guards. Then a quick run through the trees to Otafukagai, a brief pause to rest, and another rooftop excursion to the guard post, and with a knock on the window and a third explanation a laughing Chunin had exchanged the packages and sent them back on their way. They were about halfway back when Sasuke, in the lead, came to a sudden halt. Naruto only barely managed to adjust his jump so that he landed beside him on the tree branch rather than slamming into his friend's back. Naruto opened his mouth to ask what was going on, but Sasuke raised one hand, silencing him. The dark-haired boy's eyes darted around, searching for something. Naruto took a slow, deep breath and searched his own senses, looking for what had spooked his teammate. He could hear Sakura bringing up the rear, a couple of trees behind them. Above, he could see a squirrel darting from one overhanging tree branch to another. He could smell rich, familiar forest scents. Nothing unusual. With a heavy thud, Sakura landed on the branch beside him. She bent over for a moment, breathing heavily, but when Naruto glanced at her in concern she straightened. Sasuke made an annoyed sound. He's gone. Who? Sakura began. We're being followed, the Uchiha announced. You sure? Naruto asked. I didn't hear anything. If Sasuke-kun thinks he noticed something, Sakura said quietly, then hesitated. Better safe than sorry, Naruto agreed quickly. Sasuke grunted his own agreement. Naruto reached back to touch the metal case he wore on his back. We don't know what's in this, he said. Someone could be after it. This close to the village? Sakura asked, shivering. It's no guarantee of safety, Sasuke stated coldly. Not even within the walls. Sakura shivered again. We move together, protect the package. As fast as we can, no more stopping. Try to keep up dead last. Naruto's mouth twitched, filing away the matter of his final words for a candid discussion after the mission. He gave Sakura a glance, but the girl nodded. I'll be fine, she said softly. How she could put up with how Sasuke treated her, Naruto didn't understand. On three then, Naruto said, and moments later they were moving again, Naruto kept his eyes open and his ears alert, but he didn't spy any sign of pursuit. Sakura started to fall behind about 10 minutes into the run, but by slowing slightly himself, Naruto let her catch up. As they neared the village less than half an hour later, he was half convinced Sasuke had been imagining things. Naruto forced Sasuke to stop for a moment by grabbing his sleeve. "Decision time," Naruto said. "We're going to have to cross the cleared area again to get to the gates. We can't wait for another convenient cart like we planned if we really think someone is following us." Sasuke grunted, but didn't seem to have an answer. "What do you think, Sakura-chan?" It wasn't until he didn't get a response that he realized that Sakura hadn't made the jump to the tree branch he and Sasuke were perched on. Instead, she still stood on the last branch, panting and leaning against the trunk of the tree with one hand. "Coming," she said, and she pushed herself away from the tree, visibly steadied herself, and leapt. It was a bad jump, Naruto could tell instantly. She undershot the branch the boys were standing on, barely able to grab hold of it with one hand. Naruto reached down and grabbed her free hand, supporting her weight. Before he could ask, Sasuke took her other hand, and together the two lifted her up to the branch. Sasuke let go almost immediately, but Naruto shifted himself to pick up the slack. "She needs to rest, Sasuke," Naruto said. "No!" Sakura protested weakly. "I'll be fine." Naruto almost snapped at her not to lie, but he swallowed the words. She would take them badly, he knew. Sasuke wasn't so kind. "Jump to the next branch," Sasuke said, gesturing, "and I'll believe that dead last." At least Sakura for some strange reason usually listened to the bastard, no matter how offensive he got. Sakura wrenched herself free of Naruto's grasp and jumped. Naruto lost almost a full second staring at Sasuke in horror before he leapt after her. Her desperate surge of strength made her overshoot her target branch. As Naruto bounced off of it, following her, she slammed at full speed into the side of a tree trunk and started to slide down it. Naruto managed to orient himself appropriately so he could land feet first above her, and hours of tree-walking training paid off as he stuck the landing. He raced down a few feet to where Sakura had stopped her fall by grabbing a Naru with one hand. Her other arm hung at an odd angle by her side, broken. "Sorry," she muttered, as Naruto gently took hold of her and lifted her up. Without a thought for Kakashi's challenge, he carried her down the tree trunk and lay her on the ground underneath it. Sasuke caught up with him, though he stayed perched on a low branch. "How bad?" he asked, his voice so flat that someone who didn't know the Uchiha as well as Naruto would never have detected the guilt. Naruto gave the girl a quick inspection. "Broken arm looks like the worst of it. That and probably chakra exhaustion," he diagnosed. "The rest was just bumps and scrapes, nothing serious." "Sorry," Sakura said again, but then she tried to move her arm and whatever else she might have said was lost in a moan of pain. "Don't move it," Naruto warned her, reaching back into his pack. "Damn it, I don't have my full medical kit with me." He should never have gotten into the habit of not carrying it around on their D-ranks. Or at least insisted on going to grab it when they learned they were leaving the village. "I have," Sakura said, then paused with a wince. "Sealing scroll, in my rear pack." Naruto nodded, gently turning her so he could reach. "We can't afford to wait around," Sasuke interjected as Naruto pulled out the scroll. "We don't really have a choice," Naruto snapped back, unrolling the scroll. He was briefly distracted as he marveled at the breadth of material kept in so small a scroll, custom work, not an inefficient general-purpose storage scroll. "We still have a mission," Sasuke said. "Give me the package." "What?" Naruto asked, looking up at his friend. "You're just going to." "If we're being followed," Sasuke said harshly, "they'll follow the package. Even if not, she'll get help faster if I go and tell the gate guards to send someone." "It makes sense," Sakura said. "Fine," Naruto said, shrugging the metal box off of his shoulders and throwing it at Sasuke. "Go." Without another word, the Uchiha was gone, and Naruto returned his attention to the sealing scroll. A few moments later, he had released what he needed. While he started to splint her arm, Sakura took the soldier pill and painkillers he offered her from the kit. It would make her pain and exhaustion worse when they wore off in an hour or so, but he needed her on her feet, just in case Sasuke was right about someone following them. A few minutes later, Naruto helped her stand and supported her as they started to make their slow way back to the village. "I'm sorry," Sakura said again. "We all make mistakes," Naruto said as gently as he could. She looked like she felt horrible for messing up the mission already. He didn't need to guilt her right now. "Not just for this," Sakura said. For always needing help." "We're teammates," Naruto said simply. "We have to take care of each other." He sent an unkind thought off in Sasuke's direction. The other boy's argument had made sense, he supposed, but it just felt wrong. "Besides, I promised your father I'd keep you safe. Great job he'd done of that. Why? Sakura asked. Why did you after what I said this morning? Naruto stopped moving. After what you said? He said. You didn't say anything wrong. You looked so angry, Sakura said quietly. Only at myself, Naruto said. I was worried that you would hate me for the stupid thing I said. He grimaced. I know there's nothing that can make up for what my mother did. Practically the only thing I know about my father is that he died fighting the Ninetales, and I still hate it for that. I can only imagine what I'd feel if he'd been killed by another Leaf Ninja, an ally, and his killer was still. Naruto stopped short as Sakura pulled herself free of him. The pink-haired girl wavered, but she stayed on her feet as she stepped away from Naruto. Sakura-chan? He asked carefully. What's wrong? As though his question was a trigger, she broke down, tears running down her face. She averted her